you ever been hiking or just walking to your car at night and suddenly felt a cold shiver tell you to run even though you couldn't see a thing? That's not paranoia. That's your oldest instinct trying to keep you alive. Welcome back to Night Souls. Tonight, we've gathered 15 real accounts from ordinary people who ignored that gut feeling, stepped off the trail, and got too close to whatever has been hiding in these 2,000-mile ridgelines since long before we gave them names. Pay close attention to the 8th story tonight. It comes from a veteran 911 dispatcher, and it reveals the terrifying reality of what actually answers the line when you call for help from the deep woods. If you felt that same presence out there, or if something in these stories sounds terrifyingly familiar, tell us in the comments. We built this channel because these stories need to be heard, and if you have one of your own, send it to nightsoulsofficials@gmail.com. The ones that keep us awake at night are the ones we share. Hit subscribe, lock your doors, and turn down the lights. Let's begin. My name is Earl Masterson. I'm 47 years old. I drive a Peterbilt 389 from Masterson, hauling out of Johnson City, Tennessee. I've been driving since I was 19. I've jackknifed on black ice at 60 miles an hour in Montana. I've had a tire blow at the bottom of Cabbage Hill in Oregon and kept the rig upright through nothing but grip strength and cussedness. I've seen a lot of things out there. Most of them I can explain. I'm not someone who scares easy. But I don't sleep right anymore. Not since May of 2019. My brother Daryl and I grew up in the shadow of the Appalachians. Our daddy took us fishing in the Watauga River before we could walk. We knew those mountains like we knew our own hands. Daryl was 2 years younger than me, worked construction in Asheville, had a wife and a daughter who was starting college that fall. He was the one who suggested we do a section hike. Just the two of us. 5 days on the AT from Carver's Gap to Damascus. He said we were getting old and needed to do something stupid while we still could. I said we were already stupid and this would just be documented proof. We started May 14th. Weather was perfect. 65 degrees, low humidity, the rhododendrons just starting to show pink at the edges. We camped the first night at Over Mountain Shelter, that big red barn-looking thing on the Bald. 8 other hikers there. Friendly. Normal. Someone had a guitar. Someone else had a flask of bourbon. We laughed until our ribs hurt. Daryl kept saying, "This was a good idea, Earl. This was a real good idea." The second day we pushed through the Bolds. Grassy Ridge. Jane Bold. The views were something else. You could see forever. Daryl kept stopping to take pictures on his phone. He'd send them to his daughter Rachel. She'd text back emojis. We felt young. That night we camped at a stealth spot just past Little Hump Mountain. There was a flat area off the trail, maybe 50 yards down a slope, nestled in some mountain laurel. It wasn't an official site, but it was flat and we were tired. We set up our tents. I had a big Agnes copper spur. Daryl had some REI tent he'd gotten on sale and built a small fire. Not for warmth, just for the light. The company of it. We talked about Dad. He'd been gone 3 years by then, heart attack in his recliner, watching a Braves game. We talked about Mom, still living in the old house in Elizabethton, getting forgetful. We talked about Rachel, about how fast it all goes. Daryl said something I'll never forget. He said, "Earl, you ever think about how many people have died up here? I mean, since the beginning. Indians, settlers, soldiers, just regular folks who got lost or sick or fell. You think they're still around?" I told him he was being morbid and to pass the whiskey. We turned in around 10. I read a chapter of a Louis L'Amour novel by headlamp, then killed the light. I could hear Daryl snoring in his tent, maybe 15 feet away. The sound of it was comforting, familiar. We'd shared a room until I was 12. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. The moon was high and bright, turning everything silver blue. I hadn't heard anything, no noise, no reason to wake. But I was awake and I was cold. Not the cold of the mountain night, a different cold. the kind that starts in your chest and spreads outward. I sat up in my sleeping bag. The tent fabric glowed faintly with moonlight. Everything was still, too still. No wind, no insects, no sound from Daryl's tent. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming down the slope toward our camp. Heavy boots on dry leaves. Someone walking with purpose but no hurry. I told myself it was another hiker, night hiker. Some people do that, avoid the heat. But night hikers use headlamps. This person had no light, and the footsteps were too heavy for a hiker with a pack. Too solid. The footsteps stopped at the edge of our camp. I could see the shadow of someone through my tent wall. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like a long coat. Not hiking gear, not anything I'd seen on the trail. "Hey," I called out. My voice cracked. I cleared my throat. "Hey, you lost." No answer. The figure stood there. I could hear breathing. Slow, deep breaths, not winded, just breathing. "There's a shelter about 2 miles north," I said. "Over mountain, you passed it." Nothing. The figure turned its head, slowly looking toward Daryl's tent, then back toward mine. I reached for my flashlight. My hand was shaking. I clicked it on and shined it through the tent wall. The beam made the nylon glow white, and for a second I could see the silhouette clearer. Tall. That coat. And something wrong about the proportions. The arms too long, the posture wrong. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch from the light, just stood there. "Daryl," I called. "Daryl, wake up." Daryl's snoring stopped. I heard him rustle in his bag. "What? There's someone here." Daryl's tent zipper opened. His head poked out, hair wild, eyes puffy with sleep. "What do you mean, someone?" I was already unzipping my tent, flashlight in one hand, my folding knife in the other. Not that a knife would do anything, but I needed to hold something. I stepped out into the moonlight. The figure was gone. Daryl was out now too, in his boxers and a thermal shirt, looking around. "Earl, there's nobody here." There was. I swept the flashlight beam across the slope. Nothing, no one, just mountain laurel and moon shadows. "Probably a deer," Daryl said, "or a bear standing up. You know how bears look in the dark." It wasn't a bear. Then what? I didn't have an answer. I walked to where the figure had stood. The leaves were disturbed, scuffed, and there was a smell. Not animal, not human, something chemical, like ozone before a storm, but sharper. It made my eyes water. "Oh, come on," Daryl said. "You're freaking me out. Let's get back in the tents." But I kept the flashlight moving, and then I saw it. On the ground where the figure had stood was a white blaze, not painted, not the official AT marker. This was different. It looked like it had been scratched into the earth with something sharp. The dirt was turned up fresh. The mark was about the size of my hand. A rectangle like the trail blazes, but crude. "Wrong, Daryl," I said. "Come look at this." He came over, squinted at it. "What is that?" "I don't know." "Someone's messing with us," Daryl said, but his voice wasn't sure. "Some local kids, or another hiker playing a joke. At 2 in the morning. People are weird, Earl." We stood there in the moonlight, 2 grown men in our underwear, staring at a mark in the dirt that shouldn't have been there. Eventually, Daryl went back to his tent. I stayed outside for another 20 minutes, flashlight sweeping the darkness, waiting for the footsteps to come back. They didn't. The next morning, I took a picture of the blaze with my phone before we broke camp. I still have it. The picture shows the mark and our tent in the background and the slope rising up behind it. But here's the thing, and I've stared at this picture 1,000 times. In the upper right corner, there's something else. A shape, darker than the shadows, taller than the laurel, and it's looking toward the camera, toward me. I didn't see that when I took the picture. I didn't see anything when I took the picture. The slope was empty. I would have sworn to it. We finished the hike, 5 days, beautiful weather, good conversation. Daryl and I laughed about it by the third day. Earl's midnight visitor, he called it. We told the story at shelters to other hikers. Everyone had a theory. Bear, sleep paralysis, local prankster, mass hallucination from the altitude. I wanted to believe them. We got back to our lives. Daryl went back to our lives. Arrow went back to Asheville. I went back to my rig. We talked on the phone every Sunday like we always did. Rachel started college. Mom got more forgetful. Summer turned to fall. Daryl died on October 3rd, 2019. 5 months after our hike. It wasn't the thing in the mountains. I want to be clear about that. It was a construction accident. A beam fell. Wrong place, wrong time, instant. The funeral was beautiful. Rachel gave the eulogy. I stood in the back of the church because I couldn't stop shaking and I didn't want anyone to see. But here's what I can't explain. When I went to Daryl's house afterward to help his wife sort through his things, I found his phone. The pictures from our hike were still on it. I was going to send them to Rachel, and I found something I hadn't seen before. Daryl had taken a picture on our second night. After I'd gone to sleep, the timestamp was 1047 a.m. The picture was of our camp from the slope above, both tents visible, the fire pit, the moonlight. And standing between our tents facing Daryl's tent was the figure. That same long coat, those same wrong proportions. And in its hand, raised like it was pointing, was something white, something that looked like a paintbrush or a bone. Daryl never said anything about this picture. He never mentioned waking up. He never mentioned seeing anything. But he took this picture at 1:47 in the morning while I was asleep, 15 feet away. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. I still drive my rig. I still jackknife on black ice and keep it upright. But I don't hike anymore. And I don't look at the white blazes on trees the way I used to. Sometimes, on certain roads, I see a mark scratched in the dirt by the shoulder, a crude rectangle. And I don't stop. I don't even slow down. I keep the picture. Both picture. They're in a box in my closet with Daryl's obituary and his daughter's graduation announcement. Sometimes I take them out and I look at them, and I think about what Daryl asked me that night by the fire, about whether the dead stay around. I don't have an answer. I don't think I want one.
My name is Dr. Celia Hargreaves. I am 53 years old. I have taught 11th and 12th grade English at McDowell High School in Marion, North Carolina, for 28 years. I have a PhD in American Literature from UNC Chapel Hill that I completed while teaching full-time and raising 2 children alone after my divorce. I have read The Turn of the Screw approximately 40 times, and I have always maintained that the governess was mad, that the ghosts were psychological projections, that Henry James was writing about the terror of isolation and repressed sexuality rather than anything supernatural. I have built my career on the power of rational analysis, on close reading, on evidence. I was wrong about everything. I am not someone who scares easy. I have stood in front of classrooms of teenagers who did not want to be there and held their attention through sheer force of will and carefully constructed lesson plans. I have delivered eulogies. I have sat with dying friends. I have faced the kind of quiet, grinding horrors that adulthood demands and emerged with my composure intact. I believed that fear was a response to the unknown, and that the unknown could be known if one simply applied sufficient intellect and observation. The Appalachian Trail taught me that some things resist knowing, that observation can be a form of infection, that looking too long at the wrong thing changes you in ways that analysis cannot reverse. This happened in July of 2021. My son David was 26 then, working as a physical therapist in Charlotte. My daughter Margaret was 23 in her first year of law school at Wake Forest. I was alone in the house I'd bought after the divorce, a modest brick ranch on 2 acres outside Marion. The pandemic had just begun to loosen its grip. I'd spent 16 months teaching through a screen, talking to pixelated faces, feeling my connection to the world fray like old rope. I needed something, a reset, a challenge that would remind me I was still capable of physical exertion, of endurance, of existing in a body that moved through space rather than just sitting in a chair clicking between browser tabs. David suggested the Appalachian Trail, not the whole thing. I was 51 and had never backpacked more than 2 nights in my life. But a section, something manageable. He'd hike with me. A mother-son trip, he called it. Quality time. He'd been trying to get me to do something like this for years. I agreed before I could talk myself out of it. We planned a 10-day section from Newfound Gap to Davenport Gap, 55 miles through the heart of the Smokies. I bought gear. I trained. I walked the roads around my house with a loaded pack, feeling ridiculous and determined in equal measure. My neighbors, the Blevinses, watched me from their porch. Mr. Blevins raised his coffee cup in salute. Mrs. Blevins asked if I was having a midlife crisis. I told her I was having a midlife clarification. We started on July 8th. The weather was humid, oppressive, the air thick as soup. But I was prepared. I had read every guidebook. I had studied the elevation profiles. I had memorized the shelter locations and water sources. I had, in my typical fashion, over-prepared to the point of obsession. David found it amusing. He'd catch me reciting trail mileage in my sleep. The first 3 days were magnificent and brutal in equal measure. The climb out of Newfound Gap to Charlie's Banyan left me gasping and euphoric. The views from the rocky outcrop, layers of blue mountains fading to gray in the distance, clouds moving through the valleys like slow rivers, made me understand for the first time why people spoke of the mountains as spiritual places. I felt small in the right way, humbled but not diminished. David was patient with me. He'd thru-hiked the AT in 2017, between college and PT school, and he knew the rhythm of the trail in a way I was only beginning to learn. He taught me how to read the terrain, how to pace myself on climbs, how to trust my feet on rocky descents. At night, in the shelters or our tent, we talked in a way we hadn't since he was a teenager, about his work, his relationships, his fears, about my teaching, my loneliness, my growing sense that I had constructed a life that was intellectually rich but experientially impoverished. On the 4th night, we stayed at a shelter called Tri-Corner Knob. It was an old wooden structure, 3-sided, with a privy down a slope and a water source a 1/4 mile away. There were 3 other hikers there, a retired couple from Ohio doing a section hike, and a young man named Tyler who was attempting a through hike and had the lean, weathered look of someone who had been on the trail for months. The shelter was full, so David and I set up our tent on the flat area nearby. We cooked dinner, dehydrated pad thai that tasted better than it had any right to, and sat on the shelter's wooden platform, swapping stories with the other hikers. The retired couple, the Hendersons, were charming and slightly bawdy, full of trail gossip and practical advice. Tyler was quieter, watchful. He kept looking at the tree line, his jaw tight. "Something wrong?" I asked him. He shook his head. "Just tired. Long day." But he kept looking. And I found myself looking too. The forest around the shelter was dense, dark even in the fading daylight. The trees, mostly spruce and fir at that elevation, grew close together, their branches interlocking overhead like a ceiling. There was no wind. The air was perfectly still, heavy with moisture. It felt like being underwater. That night, I woke to the sound of singing. It was faint, distant, carried on a breath of air that hadn't been there before. A woman's voice, high and clear, singing something I couldn't quite make out. Not words, more like a chant or a lullaby. It seemed to come from the direction of the trail, from deeper in the forest. I lay in my sleeping bag, heart hammering, telling myself it was another hiker, someone with a radio, someone singing to stay awake on a night hike. But the voice was too pure, too unaccompanied by footsteps or gear noise, and the melody was wrong. Not a song I recognized, not a song that sounded modern. It had the quality of something ancient, something that had been sung in these mountains long before recorded music, long before the trail existed. I nudged David. He was awake, I could tell by his breathing. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. "Yeah," he said. His voice was tight, controlled. Don't say it's probably anything. Just listen." We listened. The voice rose and fell, moving closer, then farther away. It seemed to circle the camp, always just at the edge of hearing. I thought about the Hendersons in the shelter, Tyler in his tent. Were they hearing this too, or was it just us? Then the singing stopped, mid-phrase, cut off like a switch. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Footsteps, light, bare feet on the needle-covered ground, moving toward our tent. Not fast, not slow, just moving, deliberate. "David," I whispered. "I hear it." The footsteps stopped at the edge of our tent. I could see a shadow through the nylon, cast by the moonlight filtering through the trees. Human-shaped, but thin, too thin. The proportions wrong in a way I couldn't define. The shadow stood there motionless, and I felt something I had never felt before. Not fear exactly, but something deeper. A sense of being evaluated, not watched. Evaluated. There's a difference. I held my breath. David's hand found mine in the darkness, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Then the shadow moved. It bent down. I could see the motion, the elongation of the form, and placed something on the ground outside our tent. I heard the soft sound of an object being set down. Then the footsteps retreated, bare feet on needles fading into the forest. We didn't move for 10 minutes, maybe longer. When David finally unzipped the tent and shined his headlamp outside, there was nothing there. No shadow, no figure, just the night and the trees and the oppressive stillness. But there was something on the ground, a small bundle wrapped in what looked like moss and bound with twine made of some fibrous plant material. David picked it up with 2 fingers like it might bite him. He brought it into the tent. We unwrapped it together. Inside was a collection of objects, a bird's skull, cleaned and bleached white, 3 acorns arranged in a triangle, a piece of quartz crystal, rough and unpolished, and a photograph. A Polaroid, faded with age, showing a woman standing on a mountain ridge. She was wearing clothes from another era. A long dress, a shawl, boots that laced to her knees. Her face was turned away from the camera, looking out at the mountains. Her hair was long and dark, blowing in a wind that didn't seem to exist in the stillness of the photograph. On the back, in faded ink, someone had written E 1923. She never came down. I stared at that photograph for a long time. The woman, the mountains, the date. I thought about all the people who had disappeared in these mountains over the centuries. The settlers, the hikers, the ones who went up and never came down. I thought about the Cherokee stories I'd read, about the little people, about the spirits that lived in the high places. I had always dismissed them as folklore, as cultural artifacts, as interesting narratives with no basis in empirical reality. But I was holding a photograph from 1923 that had been left outside my tent by something that walked barefoot through the forest at 3 in the morning. In the morning, I showed the bundle to the Hendersons. They were mystified, slightly amused, probably a trail angel, Mrs. Henderson said, or someone playing a prank. The AT attracts all kinds. Tyler wasn't amused. He looked at the photograph with an expression I couldn't read. "I've heard about this," he said quietly. "Up north, in Maine, hikers finding things, old things, left on the trail, in shelters." "What kind of things?" David asked. "Doesn't matter what kind. The point is, you don't keep them. You leave them where you found them, or you burn them, but you don't carry them with you." "That's superstition," I said. I could hear the defensiveness in my own voice. "There's a rational explanation for this. Someone's playing a game, a very elaborate, very committed game." Tyler looked at me with something like pity. "Dr. Hargreaves, I've been on this trail for 4 months. I've seen things I can't explain. I've met hikers who quit because of what they saw. Not what they imagined, what they saw. The mountains are old. Older than us. Older than our rationality. And some things in them, they don't care about our explanations." I wanted to argue. I wanted to deploy my analytical tools, my critical frameworks, my years of training in skepticism and evidence-based reasoning. But I was holding a bird's skull in a photograph from 1923, and the morning light filtering through the spruce trees seemed thin and insufficient, like a stage light that had been left on after the play ended. We hiked on. I carried the bundle in my pack despite Tyler's warning. I told myself I would turn it in to a ranger station, that it was evidence of something, harassment maybe, or an elaborate art project. I wasn't going to be frightened into superstition by a collection of forest debris in an old photograph. The next 3 days were strange, not in any dramatic way, just off. The weather turned. Fog rolled in thick and white, reducing visibility to 20 feet. The trail became a ghost of itself, white blazes appearing and disappearing in the mist like signals from a lighthouse in a storm. David and I stayed close together, navigating by compass and GPS when the blazes failed us. But the strangeness wasn't in the weather, it was in the silence. The forest went quiet. No birds, no insects, no rustling of small animals in the undergrowth. Just our footsteps and breathing, and occasionally when the wind shifted, that singing. Distant, faint, always from the direction we were heading, never from behind. On the 7th night, we camped at a place called Cosby Knob Shelter. It was empty, no other hikers. The fog was so thick it pressed against the tent walls, damp and clinging. We didn't build a fire. Everything was too wet. We ate cold food and went to bed early, both of us exhausted from navigating the whiteout conditions. I woke at some point in the night. The fog had cleared and moonlight was streaming through the tent mesh. David was asleep, breathing deeply. But something was wrong with the light. It was too bright, too silver. And it was coming from the wrong direction, from the uphill side of the tent, where the ridge rose toward the tree line. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. The world had transformed. The fog was gone, replaced by a clarity I had never seen before. Every leaf, every needle, every blade of grass was etched in silver and black. The stars were impossibly bright, dense as spilled salt across the sky. And on the ridge above the camp, silhouetted against that impossible sky, was a figure. It was the woman from the photograph. I knew it with a certainty that bypassed thought, the long dress, the shawl, the hair dark and loose blowing in a wind I couldn't feel. She was standing on the ridge looking down at me, or not at me, through me, at something beyond me that I couldn't see. I should have been terrified. I should have screamed, woken David, run back into the tent. But I wasn't terrified. I was transfixed. The figure raised one hand slowly and pointed, not at me, at the trail, at the direction we were heading. Then she lowered her hand and turned, walking up the ridge and into the trees, moving with a grace that wasn't human, that suggested joints bending in directions they shouldn't, that suggested weight distributed in ways that defied physics. I stood there until she was gone. Then I went back into the tent and lay down next to David, shaking uncontrollably. I didn't wake him. I didn't tell him. What would I have said? That I'd seen a ghost? That I'd seen a woman from a 1923 photograph walking on a ridge in the Smokies? He would have thought I was hallucinating. Exhaustion. Altitude. Hypoxia. I would have thought the same if I hadn't been so certain. The next morning, I found another bundle outside the tent. This one contained a lock of dark hair tied with the same plant fiber twine, and another photograph. The same woman, but closer now, close enough to see her face. She was beautiful in a severe mountain way. High cheekbones, dark eyes, a mouth that was neither smiling nor frowning. And in the background, barely visible, were other figures, standing among the trees, watching. On the back, E. Still waits. Do not follow. I showed this one to David. He was concerned now, not amused. Mom, I think we need to get off the trail. Something's not right. I know, I said. And I did know. But I also knew, with a certainty that felt like it came from outside myself, that we couldn't get off the trail. Not yet. That there was something we were supposed to see. Something that I'd been waiting for someone to see it for a very long time. We hiked on. The fog returned, thicker than before. The singing grew closer. On the 8th night, we heard it right outside the tent, that clear, high voice, singing words I almost understood, in a language that sounded like English distorted through time and distance. David and I held each other in the darkness, not speaking, not moving, just listening. On the 9th day, we reached Davenport Gap, the trailhead, the end of our section. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no people, just the trail sign and the forest and the fog that seemed to follow us like a faithful dog. I found the third bundle on the signpost itself. Tied to the wooden post with twine, this one contained no photograph, just a piece of paper, old and yellowed with handwriting and faded ink. Thank you for seeing me. No one sees anymore. They walk through with their screens and their noise, and they do not see. But you saw, you listened. I am not alone now. Neither are you. Do not come back. I will be here. I am always here. I still have that note. I have all of it, the bundles, the photographs, the note. They're in a box in my attic, wrapped in cloth, hidden away. I haven't told anyone the full story. Not David, who thinks we experienced some kind of shared hallucination brought on by exhaustion and altitude. Not my colleagues, who would think I'd lost my mind. Not my students, who look to me for rational analysis and evidence-based thinking. I still teach the turn of the screw, but now, when we reach the end, when the governess holds the dead child and claims to have saved him, I don't offer my interpretation. I ask the students what they think, and I listen, really listen, because I no longer know what I believe about the boundaries between the living and the dead, between perception and reality, between the rational world and the ancient, patient things that wait in the high places. I don't hike anymore. David has tried to get me back on the trail, to replace the bad memory with good ones. but I can't, because it wasn't a bad memory. It was something else. Something that doesn't fit into categories of good or bad. Something that changed the fundamental structure of how I understand existence. I still hear the singing sometimes, not often. Just occasionally, late at night when I'm grading papers and the house is quiet. I'll look up from a student's essay, and there it will be, faint, distant, coming from no particular direction. And I'll sit very still, and I'll listen, and I'll wonder if she's still up there, on that ridge waiting for the next person who knows how to see. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know this. The mountains are older than our explanations, and some things in them have been waiting a very long time for someone to stop walking long enough to notice.
Okay, so, my name is Jason Okonkwo. I'm 24. I do social media management for this skincare brand in Brooklyn, which is basically just me making TikToks about moisturizer and pretending I care. And I need you to understand something before I start this story. I was not a nature person at all. My idea of outdoors was the rooftop bar at my friend's apartment in Bushwick. My idea of hiking was walking to the bodega when the subway was down. But 2023 was rough, okay? Really rough. My mom got sick. She's fine now, but there was this whole thing with her heart, emergency surgery, me flying back to Atlanta 3 times in 2 months. My girlfriend dumped me because I was emotionally unavailable, which, fair, but also ouch. And my job was just eating me, literally consuming my will to live. I was doom scrolling at 2 a.m., anxiety through the roof, couldn't sleep without melatonin and white noise, and sometimes not even then. So I did what every burnt-out millennial does. I watched a YouTube video about the Appalachian Trail and decided I was going to thru-hike it. The whole thing. Georgia to Maine. 2,000 miles. No phone, no social media, just me and the trail. I bought all the gear in a week. Spent way too much money at REI, my credit card was screaming, and I quit my job with this dramatic email that I now cringe thinking about. But at the time, it felt like the most alive I'd been in years. I started March 15th at Springer Mountain, cold as hell. I had no idea what I was doing. My pack was too heavy, my boots were wrong, I got blisters on day 2 that made me want to amputate my feet. But I kept going. Because every step away from my old life felt like medicine. The trail became my whole world. White blazes, shelter names, water sources, the rhythm of walk, eat, sleep, walk. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped thinking about Brooklyn. I just existed, in my body, in the woods. It was actually kind of amazing. By late April, I was in Virginia, somewhere around the Grayson Highlands. I'd lost 20 pounds. I had a trail name, Jukebox, because I sang constantly, old R&B songs my mum used to play, stuff by Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. Other hikers knew me. I had a little family out there. This guy named Tumbleweed, who was 50 and had already thru-hiked twice. This girl named Pixel, who was doing her second thru attempt after quitting in New Hampshire the year before. We stuck together, leapfrogged each other, met up at shelters, shared food and stories, and the kind of friendship that only exists when you're all slightly miserable and completely dependent on each other. That's the context. That's who I was. Someone who had found something real in the woods. Someone who thought they'd left the noise behind. The shelter was called Old Orchard. It was in this weird in-between area, not quite the highlands, not quite the forest yet. The shelter itself was old, wooden, 3-sided, with a roof that leaked in one corner and a privy that smelled like something had died in it recently. There were 5 of us there that night. Me, Tumbleweed, Pixel, a section hiker named Dave, who was doing a week with his teenage son, and this other thru hiker named Ghost, who I'd never met before. Ghost was weird from the start. Not dangerous weird, just off. He didn't talk much. He sat slightly apart from the group, eating his dinner with mechanical precision, not joining in the conversation. He was young, maybe my age, white guy with a beard that was patchy and eyes that didn't seem to focus on anything specific. He kept looking at his phone, which was weird because most thru hikers barely have battery by the time they reach camp. But his phone was always on, screen glowing, though I never saw him actually use it for anything. "What's your deal, Ghost?" I asked at one point, trying to be friendly. "You got a family waiting for you at home? A job you're escaping?" He looked at me for a long moment. His eyes were pale blue, almost colorless. "I'm not escaping anything," he said. His voice was flat, no inflection. "I'm looking for something." "Like what?" "The quiet places," he said. Then he turned back to his phone, and that was the end of the conversation. We all went to bed around 9. I was in my tent. I'd started tenting more as the weather got warmer, and I fell asleep fast, exhausted from a 20-mile day. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. My phone was dead. I'd forgotten to charge it, so I had no clock. But it was deep night, the kind of dark that exists only in forests far from any city light. I woke because I was cold. Not normal cold. Like bone cold. Like someone had opened a freezer inside my sleeping bag. I sat up, shivering, and realized my tent was glowing. Not from a light inside, from outside. A faint, blue-white light that filtered through the nylon walls, casting everything in this sick, underwater color. I could see my breath. I could see the condensation on the inside of the tent, freezing in real time. I started to say, and then I heard it. A sound, not a voice, not an animal, something between a hum and a vibration so low I felt it in my teeth before I heard it with my ears. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere surrounding the shelter, pressing against my tent like a physical weight. I fumbled for my headlamp. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped it twice. When I finally clicked it on, the beam was weak, yellow, barely cutting through the blue glow. I unzipped my tent. The world outside had changed. The shelter was there. The trees were there. But everything was bathed in that blue light, and the light was coming from above. I looked up, and I don't know how to describe this. I saw the sky wrong. The stars were in the wrong places. The constellations I knew, Orion, the Big Dipper, Cassiopeia, were distorted, stretched, like someone had taken a photograph and smeared it, and there was something else, something in the spaces between the stars. Shapes, moving, not clouds, not aircraft, something that watched back. I should have screamed, I should have woken everyone, but I couldn't move, I couldn't look away. The hum was louder now, filling my head, making my vision pulse with each vibration. And I felt something else, a presence. Not the shapes in the sky, something closer, something in the shelter. I turned my head. It felt like moving through water, like the air had thickened to syrup, and looked at the shelter. The other tents were dark. No one else was awake. No one else had come out. But in the shelter itself, I could see a figure. Ghost. The Berethaniotov front of the shelter, facing away from me, looking up at the sky. His posture was wrong, too straight, too still, like a mannequin, and his phone was in his hand, held up like he was recording, but the screen was dark, dead. The blue light intensified. I felt pressure on my chest, like someone was sitting on me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. I just stood there in the frozen grass, in the wrong light, watching Ghost watch the sky. Then he turned around. His face was... I can't describe his face. It was Ghost's face, but it wasn't. The features were the same, but the expression was wrong, empty, like a mask. And his eyes, his pale blue eyes were glowing, not reflecting the blue light, emitting it, like the light was coming from inside him. He looked at me, directly at me, and he smiled. Not a human smile, a stretching of facial muscles that approximated a smile without containing any of the emotion. "Jukebox," he said. His voice was different, deeper, layered, like multiple voices speaking in imperfect unison. "You shouldn't be awake. The quiet places are for those who know how to listen." I tried to speak. My mouth moved, but no sound came out. "You sing too loud," he said. "You fill the silence with noise, but you're learning. You're getting quieter. Keep walking, jukebox. Keep getting quiet. We'll find you when you're ready." Then the light intensified to a blinding flash, and I was on my knees, gasping, the cold suddenly gone, replaced by normal night air, normal darkness, normal stars in their normal places. I stayed on my knees for I don't know how long. When I finally stood up shaking, tears streaming down my face without me knowing when I'd started crying, the shelter was dark. Ghost's tent was gone. Not packed up, just gone. The grass where he'd pitched it was undisturbed, like no tent had ever been there. I stumbled to Tumbleweed's tent and shook him awake. "Ghost is gone," I said. "Something happened. Something was here." Tumbleweed emerged, bleary, annoyed. "What are you talking about? Ghost left yesterday morning, remember?" He said he was getting off the trail, going home. "No," I said. "He was here, at dinner. He was in the shelter. I talked to him." Tumbleweed looked at me with concern. Not belief, concern. "Jukebox, Ghost left yesterday. We all said goodbye. You were there. You shook his hand. I didn't shake anyone's hand. I didn't say goodbye. I would remember." But when Pixel and Dave's son woke up, they all said the same thing. Ghost had left the previous morning. They remembered it clearly. They remembered me being there, waving as Ghost walked down the trail toward the road. I checked my phone when I charged it that afternoon. There were no photos from the night before, no videos, no evidence, just my memory, which felt less reliable with every hour that passed. But here's the thing I can't explain, the thing that makes me wonder if I'm crazy or if the world is. I found a file on my phone, an audio file, time-stamped 3014 AM, the night of the blue light. I don't remember recording it. I don't remember touching my phone, but there it was in my voice memos, a file named off-doth-the she grid. I listened to it once, only once. I'm going to describe what I heard, but I'm not going to play it for you because I can't. I can't hear it again. The first 30 seconds is just ambient noise. Wind in trees, my breathing ragged and scared. Then the hum starts, that low tooth-rattling vibration. It builds for about a minute. Then, clear as day, I hear my own voice, but I'm not speaking, I'm singing. "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye. But wrong, the tempo is wrong, the melody is distorted, and my voice sounds like it's coming from underwater or from the bottom of a well or from somewhere very far away. Then another voice joins, not Ghost's voice, something else. Something that hums along with the melody without knowing the words, creating harmonies that shouldn't exist, that make my skin crawl just remembering them. The recording lasts 11 minutes. At the end, the humming voice says something. Not in English, not in any language I recognize, but I understood it anyway. I understood it in the same way you understand a scream or a lullaby or the sound of someone crying in the dark. It said, "We heard you singing. We like singers. Keep singing, little bird. We'll be listening." I finished the trail, all 2,000 miles. Katahdin, September 14th. I cried at the summit, not because I was proud, because I was alive, because something had let me live. But I don't sing anymore, not in the shower, not in my car, not even to myself. I tried once a few weeks after I got home. I opened my mouth to sing "What's Going On" the way I used to, the way my mom taught me, and I felt it. That pressure, that presence, that sense of being listened to by something that wasn't human, wasn't friendly, wasn't anything I had words for. I stopped. I haven't sung since. I got a new job. I moved to a different apartment. I deleted all my social media. I'm trying to be quiet. I'm trying to learn how to listen. Sometimes, late at night when the city is still and my phone is off and the only light is from the street lamps outside, I hear it. The hum, faint, distant, like it's coming from the sky or from inside my own head or from both at once. And I know that whatever ghost was looking for, whatever he found in the quiet places, it's still out there and it's still listening. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I'm getting quieter every day. My name is Harlan P. Vance. I'm 71 years old. I retired from the United States Postal Service in 2019 after 37 years of rural route delivery in Pocahontas County, West Virginia. I have driven every road, hollow, and ridge trail in that county at least 1,000 times. I have delivered mail through floods, ice storms, mudslides, and once, I am not exaggerating, a small wildfire that I drove through because turning around would have meant a 20-mile detour and Mrs. Peary needed her blood pressure medication. I'm not someone who scares easy. I'm someone who has learned that most things that seem frightening in the moment have perfectly ordinary explanations if you just wait long enough. I wish I could say the same about what happened on October 17th, 2017, but I can't, and I've waited 6 years. I'm still waiting. I built my house in 1984. My wife, Eleanor, God rest her, and I bought 5 acres on the ridge outside Marlinton, up a dirt road that the county only grades twice a year. The house is nothing fancy. A frame, cedar siding, a wraparound porch that Eleanor insisted on because she loved to sit and watch the mountains change color with the seasons. We raised 2 children there. We buried 2 dogs in the backyard. We grew old together in that house, surrounded by the quiet that only exists in places where the nearest neighbor is a mile away and the cell service is theoretical. Eleanor passed in 2015, pancreatic cancer. Fast, brutal. She was gone 6 weeks after the diagnosis. I buried her in the family plot at the Methodist Church in Marlinton, next to her parents, and I came back to the house alone. Our children, both living in Richmond now, both with families of their own, wanted me to move, sell the house, come live near them, be closer to grandchildren, to doctors, to civilization. I refused. The house was all I had left of her. The porch where she sat, the kitchen where she cooked, the bedroom where she died, holding my hand, telling me not to be afraid, that she'd see me again on the other side. I couldn't leave that. I wouldn't. So I stayed, alone, 71 years old, in a house on a ridge with the Appalachian Trail running through the national forest 3 miles to the west. I could see the trail from my kitchen window on clear days, a thin line of disturbed earth cutting through the trees on the far ridge. Sometimes in late afternoon, I'd see hikers moving along it. Tiny figures, reduced to specks by distance, carrying their lives on their backs. I wondered about them, where they came from, what they were running from or toward. Eleanor and I had talked about section hiking the AT once, back when we were younger and our knees still worked. We never did it. Life got in the way. It always does. October 17th, 2017 was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my grocery days. I'd drive into Marlinton, get my supplies for the week, have lunch at the diner, maybe chat with someone who remembered Eleanor, who would tell me how much they missed her, who would look at me with pity that I didn't want and couldn't refuse. I got home around 2 in the afternoon. The weather had turned. A cold front was moving through, bringing rain and wind from the northwest. The mountains were invisible behind a curtain of gray cloud, the treetops bending and swaying like they were trying to escape their roots. I unloaded my groceries, put them away, made a pot of coffee. Then I sat at the kitchen table, as I always did, and looked out the window at the trail. There was a hiker on the ridge, not unusual. October is prime hiking season. The leaves are turning, the bugs are gone, the temperatures are perfect. I saw hikers all the time, but this one was different. This one was standing still. Most hikers move. Even when they stop to rest, they shift their weight, adjust their packs, look at maps or phones. This figure was motionless, facing my direction, not moving at all, just standing there in the wind and the approaching rain, looking toward my house. I couldn't make out details at that distance, just a shape, human-sized, wearing what looked like dark clothing, no pack that I could see, which was strange. Even day hikers carry something, water, snacks, a jacket. This figure had nothing, just stood there, hands at its sides, facing me. I watched for maybe 10 minutes. The figure didn't move. The rain started, light at first, then heavier, driven by the wind. I could see it slanting across the ridge, soaking everything, but the figure didn't react. Didn't pull up a hood, didn't seek shelter. Just stood there, getting wet, looking at my house. I told myself it was a hiker who'd gotten turned around, confused by the weather, maybe injured, unable to move. I should call someone, the Forest Service, search and rescue. But something stopped me, something in the stillness of that figure, the wrongness of it. I got my binoculars. I keep them by the window for bird watching. Eleanor got me into it, back when her eyes were better than mine. I focused them on the ridge, on the figure, and I looked. It was a person. I could see that much, human-shaped, but the proportions were wrong. The arms too long, the neck too thin, the head too large for the body. And the face, I couldn't see the face clearly through the rain and the distance, but I could see that it was pale, unnaturally pale, like a mask, like something that had never seen the sun. The figure raised one of those two long arms and pointed, not at the house, at me, directly at me, through the binoculars, through the rain, through the quarter-mile of mountain air between us. I felt it like a physical touch. A cold finger pressed against my forehead. I dropped the binoculars. I stepped back from the window. My heart was hammering, my hands shaking, my mouth dry as cotton. I told myself, I rationalized, that it was a trick of the light, the rain, the distance, the magnification of the binoculars distorting proportions. The figure was probably a normal hiker, cold and confused, pointing at my house because it was the only structure visible, hoping for help. I picked up the binoculars again, forced myself to look. The figure was gone, not walked away, not moved to shelter, just gone. The ridge was empty, rain falling on empty ground, trees bending in the wind, no figure, no sign that anyone had ever been there. I stood at that window for an hour. The rain turned to sleet, the temperature dropped, darkness came early, the gray afternoon fading to black without passing through twilight. I didn't move. I didn't eat. I just stood there looking at the empty ridge, waiting for the figure to reappear. It didn't. I slept badly that night. Dreams I couldn't remember except for the feeling of being watched, of something standing outside my window, looking in, its face pressed against the glass, its breath fogging the pain. I woke multiple times, convinced I'd heard footsteps on the porch, the creak of the boards under weight that shouldn't have been there. Each time I got up and checked. Each time there was nothing, just the wind, just the sleet, just the darkness. The next morning, I found the footprints. They were on the ridge. I hiked up there, something I hadn't done in years, my knees protesting every step because I needed to see, needed evidence, needed something to prove that what I'd seen was real, or something to prove it wasn't. The footprints were there, in the mud, on the trail, exactly where the figure had stood. But they weren't human footprints. They were too long, too narrow, with too many toes, 6, maybe 7, splayed in a way that suggested joints bending wrong. And they were deep, too deep, like whatever made them weighed significantly more than a person. The mud was compressed, the edges sharp, as if the feet had been pressed into the earth with deliberate force. I followed them. They led away from the trail, into the forest, down the slope toward my house. Not on the trail. Through the undergrowth, through brush that should have slowed any normal person. The footprints were clear, undisturbed, moving in a straight line toward my property line. I stopped at the edge of my land. The footprints continued, down the slope, through the trees, right to the edge of my yard. I could see them from where I stood, the last few impressions in the wet grass leading to my porch. To my porch. I ran. I shouldn't have. I'm 71. My knees are shot. I could have broken my neck on that slope. But I ran. I ran to my house, to my porch, to the place where Eleanor and I had sat for 30 years, watching the mountains, drinking coffee, growing old together. There were footprints on the porch boards, the same wrong shape, the same too many toes. They led to the kitchen window, to the exact spot where I had stood, watching the figure on the ridge. And on the window, pressed against the glass from the outside, was a handprint. Not 5 fingers, 7. Long, thin, splayed like the toes, and the glass was cracked, not shattered. Cracked in a pattern that radiated from the palm, like something had pressed against it with tremendous force, with intention, with a desire to get in. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. I stood on that porch, in the cold morning air, looking at that handprint, and I felt something break inside me, not my heart. Something deeper. The part of me that had spent 71 years believing that the world was fundamentally knowable, that strange things had explanations, that if you just looked hard enough and thought clearly enough, you could understand anything. I called my son. I told him I was selling the house. I told him I was moving to Florida. I didn't tell him why. I couldn't. How do you explain a handprint with 7 fingers? How do you explain footprints that led from a ridge to your porch in the middle of a storm? How do you explain a figure that stood in the rain for an hour looking at you and then disappeared without walking away? I sold the house in December, below market value, to a young couple from Charleston who thought they were getting a deal on a mountain retreat. I didn't tell them anything. I took my things, Eleanor's photo albums, her jewelry, the quilt her mother made, and I left. I haven't been back. I don't plan to go back, but I still have the binoculars. And sometimes, in my condo in Florida, on the 6th floor with the parking garage ramp visible from my window and the sound of traffic constant below, I take them out. I look through them. I remember the figure on the ridge, the pointing arm, the handprint on the glass, and I wonder what it wanted, what it was looking for, why it chose my house, my window, me. Eleanor believed in spirits. She believed the mountains were alive with the presence of those who had lived and died there, that the land remembered, that the dead didn't always leave. I used to smile at her beliefs, pat her hand, tell her she had a poet's soul. I didn't believe any of it. I believe it now. Not the way she believed, not as comfort, not as connection to something larger. I believe it as threat, as warning, as the understanding that there are things in this world, in those mountains, that have been there longer than us, that will be there after us, that watch us with patience we can't comprehend, and purposes we can't understand. I don't look at mountains anymore. I avoid them. I take the long way around if there's a ridge between me and where I'm going. I live in Florida now, where the highest point is a landfill and the only trails are golf cart paths. But sometimes, when I'm trying to sleep, when the air conditioning hums and the traffic murmurs and the world is as artificial and controlled as I can make it, I hear something. A sound that doesn't belong. A creak like porch boards underweight, a tap like fingers on glass. And I freeze, every muscle locked, every breath held, waiting for the handprint to appear on my 6th floor window, waiting for the figure to find me again, wherever I go. It hasn't happened yet. But I know that it's not over. That whatever was on that ridge is still out there, still walking, still looking for something, or someone. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this, I delivered mail for 37 years, and I never once felt afraid on those mountain roads. I faced floods and fires and ice storms, and I never once thought about quitting. But one figure on a ridge, one handprint on a window, and I ran. I ran like a child from a nightmare, and I haven't stopped running since. The mountains are still there. The trail is still there. And somewhere on that ridge, I believe something is still standing in the rain, pointing at an empty house, waiting for someone else to look through the binoculars and see it. Don't look. That's my advice. Don't look. Just keep walking. Keep driving. Keep your eyes on the road and your windows locked and your binoculars in the drawer. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And once it sees you back, it never forgets. My name is Dexter Cole. I'm 34. I work construction in Asheville, North Carolina. Framing, mostly, sometimes roofing when the money's right. I've been doing it since I was 16. Dropped out of high school to help my mom pay bills after my old man left. I've fallen off a ladder twice. I've had a nail gun go through my boot and miss my foot by a quarter inch. I've worked 100 feet in the air on a beam 6 inches wide, with wind that would knock a man down, and never thought twice about it. I'm not someone who scares easy, but I don't go in the woods no more. Not since the summer of 2022. My buddy Ray and I decided to do a section hike. Ray's a plumber, known him since we were kids. We grew up in the same trailer park outside Hendersonville. We both got out, both made something of ourselves, both still talk like we did when we were 12. Ray wanted to lose weight. I wanted to get away from my ex-wife's lawyers. The trails seemed like a good place for both. We picked a section in the Nantahala National Forest. Georgia border area, remote, beautiful, supposed to be one of the prettiest parts of the whole AT. We planned 5 days, 40 miles, easy pace. We were both in decent shape from our jobs, but neither of us was a hiker. We bought gear at Bass Pro, watched some YouTube videos, figured we'd learn as we went. First 2 days were great. Harder than we expected. The climbs were steep, the packs heavier than they felt in the store, but we were having fun. Ray kept making jokes about bears. I kept making jokes about bears snoring. We ate like kings. Brought way too much food, shared our extra with through hikers who looked like they hadn't seen a cheeseburger in months. Third day, we hit a stretch of trail that was different. I can't explain how exactly. The trees were the same. The terrain was the same. But something felt off. The light was wrong, too green, filtered through leaves that seemed thicker than they should be. The sounds were wrong. No birds, no bugs, just this low hum that might have been wind or might have been something else. And the smell, like wet metal, like blood that's been sitting in a bucket. Ray noticed it too. This place feels weird, he said, like we're not supposed to be here. Trail goes through here, I said. White blazes say we're fine. But the white blazes were different here. Usually they're clean, crisp, painted on trees with a stencil. These were older, faded. Some looked like they'd been painted by hand, the edges uneven, the paint thick and cracking. And they were on the wrong trees, on rocks, on the ground. One was painted on a fallen log that looked like it had been there for years, the paint fresh on rotting wood. I told myself it was maintenance. Different crews, different standards. The trail was 2,000 miles long. Not every blaze was going to be perfect. We kept walking. Around midday, we came to a clearing, not a natural clearing. Something had knocked the trees down, years ago, decades maybe. The stumps were old, weathered, the wood gray and splintered, but in the center of the clearing, someone had built something. It was a structure, not a shelter, not anything official. It looked like a shrine or an altar, made of stacked stones and branches and things I didn't want to look at too closely. Bones, maybe, feathers, scraps of fabric that might have been clothing once. And covering every surface, every stone, every branch, every piece of wood were white blazes. Hundreds of them, thousands, painted, carved, scratched into everything. The symbol was everywhere, overlapping, covering every inch of the structure in a pattern that made my eyes hurt to look at. It wasn't random, there was order to it, a design, but my brain couldn't process it. It was like looking at one of those magic eye pictures from the 90s. If you stared long enough, something would appear, but I didn't want to stare. I didn't want to see what was hidden in the pattern. "Ray," I said, "we need to go." But Ray was already moving toward it. He had his phone out, taking pictures. "This is crazy," he said. "Who built this? What is this? Ray, come on." He didn't listen. He walked right up to the structure, reached out, touched one of the stones, and then he screamed. Not a scared scream, a pain scream. He jerked his hand back, and I could see blood. Deep cuts like he'd grabbed a handful of razor blades. But the stone was smooth. I'd seen it. There was nothing sharp about it. Ray was holding his hand, blood dripping between his fingers, his face white. "Something bit me," he said. "Something in there bit me." "There's nothing in there," I said, but I was already backing away. Because there was something in there. I could feel it, a presence, a weight. Like the air in the clearing was heavier than it should be, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I grabbed Ray's good arm and pulled him away. He didn't resist. He was shaking, staring at his hand, at the cuts that were deeper than they should have been, that wouldn't stop bleeding. We walked fast. Not running. Running would have meant panic, and I wasn't panicking. I was being smart. I was getting us out of there. And we didn't look back. We made it maybe half a mile before I realized the trail was wrong. The white blazes were gone. Not faded. Gone. The trees were unmarked. The path was overgrown, barely visible, like no one had walked it in years, and the forest had changed. The trees were older, bigger, their trunks wider than my arms could reach around. The undergrowth was thick, tropical, plants I didn't recognize, flowers that shouldn't have been blooming in July. "We're lost," Ray said. His voice was flat. He'd wrapped his hand in his bandana, but blood was still seeping through. "We're not lost," I said. "The trail's here. We just need to find the blazes." But there were no blazes. And the more we walked, the less the forest looked like the forest we'd been in. The light was different, dimmer, greener, like we were underwater. The sounds were different. No wind, no birds, just that hum, louder now, vibrating in my teeth, my bones, my skull. We walked for hours. Maybe. Time was wrong. My phone said it was 3047 p.m. for what felt like an eternity. The sun didn't move. The shadows didn't shift. We were walking in place, or walking in circles, or walking in circles, or secking somewhere that wasn't on any map. Then we found the clearing again. The same clearing, the same structure, the same white blazes, thousands of them covering everything. And standing in front of it, facing us, was a figure. It was human-shaped. That's all I can say. Human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. The proportions stretched, elongated, like someone had taken a person and pulled them in a taffy machine. And the face, there was something where a face should be, but it wasn't a face, it was a white blaze. Painted, carved, burned into the skin. The symbol, covering the entire head, the eyes and mouth, just darker versions of the same pattern. The figure raised one long arm and pointed at Ray, then at me, then back at the structure. "What's it want?" Ray whispered. His voice was barely audible over the hum. "I don't know," I said, "but we're not going in there." The figure lowered its arm, and then it spoke. Not with a mouth. The face was still just the blaze symbol, but from somewhere inside it, somewhere deep. The voice was multiple voices, layered, speaking in unison, in a language I didn't know but somehow understood. "Painters," it said. "You paint the path, you mark the way, but you do not see. You do not know what you mark. Come, see, know." I don't remember running. I remember Ray grabbing my arm, pulling me backward, and then we were running, crashing through undergrowth, branches whipping our faces, roots tripping our faces, roots tripping our feet. I remember the hum getting louder, then suddenly cutting off. I remember falling, hitting the ground, the breath knocked out of me. And I remember looking up and seeing a white blaze, a normal white blaze, clean, crisp, painted on a tree with a stencil. The trail, the real trail. The sun was setting, Orange light filtering through normal trees, and I could hear birds, real birds, and the wind in the leaves, and Ray breathing next to me, alive, bleeding, but alive, bleeding, but alive. We made it to a shelter that night. Other hikers were there. Normal people. They looked at Ray's hand, helped us clean it, gave us ibuprofen and bandages. They said we were lucky. Hand injuries on the trail can get infected fast. They asked what happened. We told them Ray slipped on a rock, cut his hand. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth talking about. But I kept the pictures Ray took. They're on my phone. I've looked at them 100 times. The structure, the blazes, the figure. But when I show them to other people, they see something different. They see a pile of rocks, a fallen tree, a trick of the light. They don't see what I see. And sometimes, when I'm working, when I'm up on a beam 100 feet in the air, I look down at the ground and I see white blazes painted on the concrete, on the scaffolding, on the walls of buildings that haven't been built yet. I see them everywhere now, and I know that the figure is still out there, still painting, still marking paths that lead somewhere else, somewhere that isn't on any map. I don't hike anymore. I don't go in the woods. I stay in the city, in the noise, in the light, but the blazes follow me. They're in the cracks in the sidewalk, in the stains on the ceiling, in the patterns of rust on steel beams. And sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to sleep, I hear that voice, not from outside, from inside. From somewhere in my own head. Painters, it says, you paint the path, but you do not see. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this, I used to build things, houses, structures, places where people would live and love and grow old. Now I just work. I hammer nails and cut boards and try not to look at the blazes that appear in the sawdust, in the wood grain, in the spaces between things. Because once you see them, you can't stop seeing them. And once they see you back, you're part of the pattern, whether you want to be or not.
My name is Dr. Priya Sharma. I am 39 years old. I am an associate professor of folklore and mythology at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. I hold a PhD in comparative mythology from Harvard, a master's in cultural anthropology from Oxford, and a bachelor's in English literature from UC Berkeley. I have published 3 monographs, 17 peer-reviewed articles, and I am currently under contract for a 4th book examining the intersection of Appalachian folk beliefs and Cherokee oral tradition. I have spent my entire adult life studying the stories people tell about the places they live, the monsters they fear, the spirits they believe inhabit the dark corners of the world. I have always maintained that these stories are important not because they are true in any literal sense, but because they are true in a cultural sense. They reveal values, anxieties, ways of understanding the world that resist scientific explanation. I have interviewed dozens of people who claim to have seen ghosts, encountered Bigfoot, been abducted by aliens. I have treated all of them with respect, with empathy, with the understanding that their experiences are real to them, even if they do not correspond to empirical reality. I was wrong. Not about the stories, not about the people who tell them. I was wrong about the nature of reality itself, about the boundaries between what can be known and what must be experienced, about the arrogance of thinking that academic training provides immunity from the things that academia cannot explain. This happened in August of 2023. I was conducting field research for my new book, specifically examining the phenomenon of trail ghosts, apparitions reported by Appalachian Trail hikers, often associated with specific locations, specific times of day, specific weather conditions. I had a grant. I had a research plan. I had a hypothesis that these experiences were the result of a combination of factors: physical exhaustion, sensory deprivation, altitude effects, sleep disruption, and the power of suggestion created by the rich folklore of the region. I was going to hike the trail for 6 weeks, interview hikers at shelters, record their stories, correlate them with environmental data, elevation, weather, Moon phase, geomagnetic activity. I was going to write a book that explained, rationally and thoroughly, why people see things in the woods that aren't there. I started at Springer Mountain. I was not in the best physical shape. Years of library research had softened me, but I was determined. I had a new Osprey pack, Merrill boots, trekking poles that I use with the self-consciousness of someone who has read about them in guidebooks but never actually needed them. I had a satellite phone, a GPS device, a digital recorder, and 3 notebooks. I also had a research assistant, Marcus Chen, a graduate student in his 2nd year of the PhD program. Smart, eager, slightly annoying in the way of all graduate students who haven't yet learned that enthusiasm is not the same as expertise. He was there to help with interviews, to manage the data, to carry some of the equipment so I wouldn't destroy my knees before week 2. The first 2 weeks were productive and uneventful. We interviewed 17 hikers, recorded 23 hours of audio, heard stories that ranged from the mundane, "I thought I saw someone, but it was a tree," to the genuinely disturbing. A woman who swore she'd seen her dead mother standing on a ridge in the rain. A man who claimed to have followed a figure in a white dress for 3 miles, only to realize he was walking in circles and the figure was leading him away from the trail. I recorded all of it. I took notes. I maintained my professional distance, my analytical framework, my commitment to understanding these stories as cultural products rather than literal accounts. Then we reached a section of trail in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, between Seiler's Bald and Double Spring Gap, mile 175 approximately. The terrain was difficult, steep climbs, rocky descents, the kind of trail that demands your full attention just to avoid breaking an ankle. The weather had turned humid, oppressive. The air thick with moisture that seemed to come from inside the forest itself rather than from any visible cloud. We camped at a site near a stream, not an official shelter but a flat area that showed signs of previous use. Fire ring, logs arranged as benches, a tree with initials carved into the bark. Marcus set up his tent. I set up mine. We cooked dinner, dried pasta with sauce from a pouch, eaten with plastic sporks. The kind of meal that tastes like accomplishment because you carried it on your back for 20 miles. We talked about the interviews, about the patterns we were seeing, about the book we would write. Marcus was excited. I was tired. The humidity was draining me in a way that altitude and distance hadn't. We turned in early. I read by headlamp for an hour, a novel, something light, an escape from the academic texts I'd been carrying, then turned off the light and lay in my sleeping bag, listening to the forest. The stream nearby provided white noise, a constant rush that should have been soothing. But there was something else in the sound, a rhythm, a pattern, like voices underneath the water, speaking too quietly to understand. I told myself it was auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find patterns in random noise, a well-documented phenomenon. I made a mental note to include it in the book. I fell asleep. I woke to the sound of my name. Priya. Not shouted. Not whispered. Spoken in a normal conversational tone, as if someone were sitting next to me in my tent. A woman's voice. Familiar. Warm. Priya. Wake up. I sat up, heart hammering, headlamp in hand, but not turned on. The tent was dark. The stream still rushed, but the voice had been so clear, so present. Not a dream. I know the texture of dreams, the way they dissolve upon waking. This had been real. External. Marcus? I called. Was that you? No answer. I unzipped my tent and stepped outside. The moon was high, nearly full, turning the forest into a landscape of silver and black. Marcus's tent was dark, silent. He was asleep, or pretending to be. The stream caught the moonlight, a ribbon of mercury winding through the trees. And on the other side of the stream, sitting on a fallen log, was a woman. She was wearing a sari. Blue with gold embroidery, the kind my mother used to wear to temple, to weddings, to the parties where she would smile and laugh and be someone I barely recognized. The woman on the log had my mother's face, not a resemblance. The exact face, the mole on her left cheek, the gray streak in her hair. The way she held her head, slightly tilted, as if listening to something no one else could hear. My mother died in 2019. Breast cancer. I was at her bedside. I held her hand. I watched her last breath. I watched the light go out of her eyes. I know she is dead. But there she was, sitting on a log by a stream in the Smoky Mountains, wearing her blue sari, looking at me with an expression I couldn't read. Not love. Not anger. Something else. Evaluation. Assessment. The way a scientist looks at a specimen, or a teacher looks at a student who has failed an important test. Mom? My voice came out as a croak. I cleared my throat. Mom, what are you doing here? She didn't answer. She stood up. The movement was wrong, too fluid, like a video played at slightly the wrong speed, and walked toward the stream. Toward me. But she didn't cross the stream. She stood on the other side, the water rushing between us, and she spoke. You study ghosts, she said. Her voice was my mother's voice, but the words were wrong. My mother would never have said that. She didn't understand my work. She thought it was strange, slightly embarrassing, that her daughter had spent her life studying things that didn't exist. You interview people who see things, but you don't see. You don't see. You're afraid to see. Mom, I don't. You're here to explain us away, to categorize us, to file us under folklore and psychology and sleep deprivation. But we're not categories, Priya. We're not data points. We're real. We've always been real. And we're tired of being explained. I was shaking. My knees were weak. I wanted to run, to wake Marcus, to do something rational and grounded and safe. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed by my mother's face, by the wrongness underneath the familiarity, by the sense that something was wearing her like a costume, using her memory as a doorway into my mind. Who are you? I whispered. The thing with my mother's face smiled, not my mother's smile. Too wide. Too many teeth. We're the ones who never left. The ones who walked into these mountains and found the places where the trail doesn't go. The places between. You call us ghosts, spirits, demons, fairies. We don't have names. We don't need names. We just are, and we've been waiting for someone like you, someone like me, someone who knows enough to see, but not enough to understand. Someone who looks without looking away. You've looked at so many stories, Priya, so many accounts, but you've never looked at yourself. Never asked what you might see if you stopped explaining and started experiencing. I found my voice, found some fragment of my academic self, the part that had spent decades building defenses against exactly this kind of encounter. This is a hallucination, I said. Sleep deprivation. Altitude. The power of suggestion from the folklore I've been studying. My brain is constructing this from my memories, my fears, my unresolved grief. You're not real. You're a psychological projection. The thing laughed. My mother's laugh, but layered, multiplied, as if a dozen versions of her were laughing in imperfect unison. Good, it said. Very good. Rationalize. Explain. That's what you do. But tell me, Priya, if I'm a hallucination, why can I do this? It reached across the stream. Its arms stretched, elongated, the joints bending wrong, the fingers extending too far, and it touched my face. The touch was cold, not ice cold. The cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed. It pressed against my cheek, my temple, and I felt something push into my mind. Not a thought, a presence, a weight. Like someone had opened a door in my skull and stepped inside. I saw things, images, memories, sensations that weren't mine. A woman in a long dress walking into a forest in 1847, never to return. A soldier in a gray uniform, dying of infection in a mountain cave in 1863. His last thoughts not of home or God, but of the thing he saw in the darkness before the fever took him. a hiker in 1982, following a white blaze that led off the trail, into a clearing, into a structure made of bones and stones and things that had once been alive. A child in 2019, lost for 3 days, found wandering in a daze, saying only that she'd met the lady in the blue dress who told her not to be afraid. All of them. All the stories I'd collected, all the accounts I'd filed under folklore and psychology and sleep deprivation, flooding into my mind at once, not as narratives but as experiences, as direct sensory input, as if I were living each one in real time. I felt the cold of 1847, the fever of 1863, the confusion of 1982, the strange peace of 2019. I felt them all, and I understood, not intellectually, not analytically, but in my body, in my bones, that they were real, that every story I'd ever collected was a fragment of something larger, something older, something that had been here long before the first human walked these mountains and would be here long after the last one left. The presence withdrew. The thing with my mother's face stepped back, its arm returning to normal proportions, its smile fading to something like sadness. "Now you know," it said, "now you see." But knowing and seeing are not understanding, and understanding is not safety. Go back to your books, Priya. Go back to your explanations, but remember this. Remember that you looked and something looked back. And that something is still looking. It will always be looking. Then it was gone, not faded, not walked away, just gone. The log was empty. The stream rushed on. The moonlight fell on nothing. I stood there for a long time. Eventually, I became aware that I was cold, shaking. My feet were wet. I'd stepped into the stream at some point. I didn't remember when. I walked back to my tent. I didn't wake Marcus. What would I have said? That I'd seen my dead mother by a stream? That something had touched my mind and shown me a century of horrors? He would have thought I was having a breakdown. He might have been right. I lay in my sleeping bag until dawn, not sleeping, not thinking, just existing in the aftermath of something I had no framework for. When Marcus woke up, I told him I was sick. Altitude sickness, I said. I needed to get off the trail. He was concerned, helpful, packed my gear while I sat on a log and stared at nothing. We hiked out that day, 6 miles to the nearest road. I don't remember any of it. I was somewhere else, still processing, still feeling the cold of that touch, the weight of those memories that weren't mine. I finished the book. It's being published next year. I wrote everything I planned to write. The interviews, the analysis, the correlation with environmental factors, the careful, rational explanation of why people see things in the woods. I didn't include my own experience. I couldn't. It doesn't fit the framework. It breaks the methodology. It would destroy my career, my credibility, everything I've built. But I know that the things I study are real. Not in the way I thought they were real. Not as cultural products or psychological projections, but as entities, as presences, as things that exist in the spaces between what we can measure and what we can imagine. I don't hike anymore. I don't do field research. I teach my classes, I grade my papers, I attend my faculty meetings, and I pretend that August night never happened. But sometimes when I'm lecturing about folklore, when I'm explaining to a room full of students why people believe in ghosts, I see her, in the back row or standing by the window or reflected in the glass of the projector screen. My mother's face. My mother's sorry. That smile that isn't a smile. And I stop talking. I lose my place. The students look at me with concern, with confusion, with the pity of the young for the old who are losing their grip. I smile, apologize, continue the lecture. But I'm not there anymore. I'm back by that stream, in those mountains, looking at something that looks back with eyes that aren't eyes, wearing a face that isn't a face, waiting for me to look long enough to become part of the story I've spent my life collecting. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this. I spent 30 years studying the stories people tell about the dark. and I thought I understood them. I thought I was safe in my analysis, my distance, my academic remove. But the dark doesn't care about your degrees. The dark doesn't care about your hypotheses. The dark just is. And if you look into it long enough, it will look into you. And what it sees will change you forever. I looked, it saw me, and I will never be the person I was before.
I worked the night shift at the ND paper mill in Old Town, Maine. Been there 15 years. I operate the digesters, big pressure cookers that turn wood chips into pulp. It's hot, loud, dangerous work. I've seen a man lose 3 fingers to a chain conveyor. I've seen a digester blow a gasket and spray boiling chemicals across a room. I've seen things that would make most people quit and never look back. I'm not someone who scares easy, but I don't go home no more. Not to where I grew up, not to the mountains of Madison County, North Carolina. Not since March of 2020. I left when I was 18. Couldn't wait to get out. Small town, small futures. I had a scholarship to a technical school in Massachusetts, learned to operate industrial equipment, got a job at the mill, built a life. Got married, got divorced, got a dog, got a house with a mortgage I can barely afford. Normal American story, nothing special, but I missed the mountains. Not the people, not the town, the mountains themselves. The way they looked in the morning, blue and soft like a promise. The way they smelled after rain. The way the fog filled the valleys like a sea, and you could stand on a ridge and feel like you were on an island in the sky. So in 2020, before everything went to hell with the pandemic, I took a week off. Planned to hike a section of the 18 near where I grew up. Max Patch to Hot Springs, 40 miles. Easy, familiar terrain, a way to reconnect with the place I'd spent 18 years trying to escape. I drove down from Maine. 22 hours straight, fueled by coffee and determination, and the kind of nostalgia that only hits you when you're middle-aged and starting to wonder if you made the right choices. I got to the trailhead at dawn. The mountains were exactly as I remembered them. The light was the same. The smell was the same. For a moment, standing there with my pack on, I was 18 again, full of anger and hope and a certainty that the world was waiting for me. I started walking. The first day was perfect. Clear skies, cool temperatures, the trail in good condition. I passed other hikers, through hikers, mostly lean and weathered, heading north toward Katahdin. We exchanged the usual trail greetings. How's it going? Beautiful day. Where you headed? The ritual of the trail, the temporary community of people who share nothing but a direction and a destination. I camped that night at a shelter called Roaring Fork. It was empty when I arrived. Just me, the wooden structure, the sound of the creek that gave the place its name. I set up my tent, cooked dinner, sat on the shelter's platform, and watched the stars come out. The sky was darker than anything I saw in Maine. No light pollution, no planes. Just stars, dense and bright, the Milky Way a river of light overhead. I fell asleep early, exhausted from the drive and the hike. I woke to the sound of my name, Wendell. A man's voice, deep, familiar in a way that made my chest hurt. A voice I hadn't heard in 20 years. Wendell, wake up, son. I sat up in my sleeping bag, heart hammering. The tent was dark. The stars were still visible through the mesh, but something was wrong with them. They were in the wrong positions. The constellations I knew, Orion, the Dipper, Cassiopeia, were distorted, stretched like someone had taken the sky and pulled it sideways. Wendell, come out here. I want to show you something. I knew that voice. I'd known it my whole childhood. It was my father's voice. My father died in 2005. Heart attack in his truck on the way home from the hardware store. I was in Maine. I didn't make it back for the funeral. I told myself it was because I couldn't afford the ticket, because I couldn't get time off work. The truth was simpler. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to see the town, the people, the life I'd escaped. I didn't want to stand in a church and pretend to grieve for a man I'd spent 18 years trying to get away from. But there was his voice, outside my tent, in the dark, in the mountains where I'd grown up. Wendell, don't make me ask again. I should have stayed in the tent. I should have put my earbuds in, turned up music, waited for morning. But I didn't, because some part of me, the part that was still 18, still angry, still hoping for something I couldn't name, wanted to see him, wanted to hear what he had to say, wanted, maybe, to say the things I'd never said when he was alive. I unzipped the tent and stepped outside. My father was standing by the creek, not in the creek, beside it. He was wearing his work clothes, the flannel shirt, the jeans, the boots he always had on, even on weekends. He looked exactly as I remembered him, exactly as he looked in the photograph my mother sent me after the funeral, the one I kept in a drawer and never looked at, but something was wrong. The proportions, the way he stood, too straight, too still. My father had been a restless man, always moving, always doing something with his hands. This figure was motionless, its arms at its sides, its face turned toward me, but somehow not looking at me, looking through me, at something behind me. "Dad," my voice cracked. I hated myself for that crack, for the childish need in it. "Dad, what are you doing here?" The figure didn't answer. It turned. The movement was wrong, too smooth, like a door swinging on well-oiled hinges, and started walking up the creek, away from the shelter, away from the trail, into the darkness of the forest. "Wait," I called. "Dad, wait!" I followed. I know how stupid that sounds. I know every horror movie, every ghost story, every piece of folklore would tell me not to follow the dead into the dark. But I followed because it was my father, because I had things to say, because some part of me had been waiting 20 years for this chance. The figure moved fast, faster than a man should move, especially in the dark, over rocks and roots and uneven ground. I had to run to keep up. My headlamp bounced, the beam cutting wild arcs through the trees, illuminating nothing useful, just fragments of forest, a trunk, a fern, a patch of moss that appeared and disappeared like images in a zoetrope. We walked for what felt like hours. The creek got louder, then quieter. The forest got denser, then opened into a clearing I didn't recognize, a place I'd never been despite growing up in these mountains. A flat area maybe 50 feet across, surrounded by trees that were older than anything I'd seen, their trunks wider than cars, their branches interlocking overhead like clasped hands. In the center of the clearing was a structure, not a shelter, not anything built by the Park Service. It was made of stones, stacked without mortar, forming a low wall, maybe 3 feet high. Inside the wall, the ground was covered with white stones, white bones, white feathers, and white blazes, hundreds of them painted on the stones, on the ground, on the trees around the clearing. The AT symbol repeated endlessly, covering every surface. The figure stopped at the edge of the wall. It turned to face me, and for the first time I saw its face clearly. It was my father's face, but it wasn't. The features were right. The nose, the jaw, the scar above his left eyebrow from the fishing accident when I was 10, but the expression was wrong. Empty, like a mask. And the eyes, my father's eyes, had been brown, warm, full of the anger and love and disappointment that defined our relationship. These eyes were white, not the white of blindness, the white of absence, of a sky with no stars, of a page with no words. "You're not my father," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that steadiness. "What are you?" The thing smiled. My father smiled, but stretched too wide, the corners of the mouth reaching almost to the ears. "I'm what you left behind," it said, my father's voice, but layered, echoing, as if spoken from the bottom of a well. "I'm what you abandoned. You ran, Wendell, you ran and you never looked back. But we remember. The mountains remember. The trail remembers. Every step you took away from here we felt. Every year you stayed away we waited. And now you're back. And we have things to show you." It gestured toward the structure. The white blazes seemed to pulse in the moonlight, to throb with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat. Come inside, it said. See what you've been missing. See what you could have been. See what you still could be if you stay. I looked at the structure, at the white stones and white bones and white feathers, at the blazes that covered everything, that seemed to form a pattern I couldn't quite perceive, a design that hovered at the edge of comprehension, and I felt something, a pull, a longing. The same longing that had brought me back to these mountains after 20 years, that had made me drive 22 hours to stand on a ridge and remember being 18. But I also felt something else. The part of me that had left, that had built a life in Maine, in the noise and the light and the industrial rhythm of the mill. The part that knew with a certainty that bypassed thought, that if I stepped inside that wall, I wouldn't come out. Not as myself. Not as anything human. No, I said. The thing's smile faltered. For a moment, something flickered behind those white eyes. Surprise, maybe. Oh, anger. No, you're not my father. My father is dead. And whatever you are, whatever this is, I'm not part of it. I left for a reason. I built a life for a reason. And I'm not giving that up because you know my name and wear my father's face. I turned around. I walked away. I expected to feel hands on me, to be pulled back, to be forced into that circle of white, but nothing touched me. I walked through the forest, in the dark, without my headlamp, navigating by instinct and memory and the kind of desperation that gives you strength you didn't know you had. I found the creek. I followed it back to the shelter. I packed my tent in the dark, not caring about organization, just shoving everything into my pack and running. I ran down the trail, away from Roaring Fork, away from the clearing, away from the thing wearing my father's face. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs gave out, and I collapsed on the trail, gasping, crying, not knowing if I was running towards safety or away from the only truth I'd ever been offered. I made it to a road by dawn, pitched a ride to Hot Springs, called a friend to drive me to Asheville, where I rented a car and drove straight back to Maine. 22 hours, no stops except for gas. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I still worked a night shift at the mill. I still operate the digesters. I still see things that would make most people quit. But nothing scares me like that clearing, like those white eyes, like the sound of my father's voice saying my name in the dark. I haven't been back to North Carolina. I haven't spoken to my mother in 2 years, not because I'm angry, but because I'm afraid that if I hear her voice, I'll hear the echo underneath it, the thing that wears voices like clothes, that waits in clearings and by creeks and on ridges, wearing the faces of the dead, offering things that look like truth but taste like ash. Sometimes at the mill, when the digesters are running and the steam is thick and the noise is loud enough to drown out thought, I see white blazes painted on the metal walls, on the concrete floor, on the safety equipment I'm supposed to check every hour. I see them, and I know that the thing from the clearing is still watching, still waiting, still wearing my father's face and calling my name in the dark. I don't answer. I keep working. I keep living. I keep running, even though I'm not sure what I'm running toward anymore. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this, I spent 20 years running from my father, from my hometown, from the mountains that raised me. And when I finally went back, something was waiting, something that had been waiting the whole time. Something that knows my name and wears my face and wants me to come home. I'm not going home, not ever, but I don't know if not going is enough. I don't know if distance matters to something that can wear your father's voice and call you from the dark. I just know that every night, when I leave the mill and walk to my car in the parking lot, I look up at the sky. And sometimes in the spaces between the stars, I see white. Not stars, not clouds, just white, waiting. And I walk faster. I get in my car. I drive home with the radio loud and the windows up, and I don't look back. Because if I look back, I might see my father standing in the parking lot, wearing his work clothes, smiling that too wide smile, holding out his hand and saying my name, and I don't know if I'd have the strength to say no again.
My name is Margaret Thornton. Everyone calls me Maggie. I'm 56 years old. I retired in 2022 after 31 years as a 911 dispatcher for the Buncombe County Emergency Communications Center in Asheville, North Carolina. I've heard everything over that headset: car accidents, heart attacks, domestic violence, childbirth in parking lots. I've talked people through CPR while they were covered in their spouse's blood. I've listened to teenagers describe overdoses. I've heard gunshots in the background of calls that ended with silence. I'm not someone who scares easy. I'm someone who has learned that fear is a luxury you can't afford when someone else's life depends on your voice staying steady. But October 14th, 2019 changed something in me. Something fundamental. Something I still don't have words for. It was a Tuesday night. I was working the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Quiet shift usually. Tuesdays were slow. I was at my station, headset on, monitoring 3 screens, one for incoming calls, one for unit locations, one for weather and emergency alerts. My partner, Darnell, was in the break room getting coffee. It was just me and the hum of the equipment and the occasional radio check from patrol units. The call came in at 2:37 a.m. The caller ID showed a cell phone with a Georgia area code. The GPS coordinates placed the caller somewhere in the Pisgah National Forest near the Appalachian Trail, approximately 10 miles from the nearest road. I answered. 911, what's your emergency? Silence at first. Just breathing. Heavy. Controlled, not panicked. I'd learned to re-breathing over the years. The shallow gasps of asthma, the ragged sucking of someone with a chest wound, the hyperventilation of panic, the slow, deliberate breaths of someone trying to stay calm. This was different. This was someone breathing carefully, as if each breath required conscious effort, as if the air itself was something to be managed. 911, this is dispatch. Can you hear me? What's your emergency? A woman's voice, young, maybe 20s. Soft, almost whispered, as if she were trying not to be overheard. I need help, but I don't know if help can reach me. Ma'am, I have your location. You're in the Pisgah National Forest near the Appalachian Trail. Can you tell me what's happening? Are you injured? No, I'm not injured. I'm hiding. Hiding from what? Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear something in the background. Not wind, not animals. A sound I couldn't identify. A low, rhythmic sound, like breathing but not human breathing. Too deep, too slow. Like something the size of a car, inhaling and exhaling with the patience of geological time. Ma'am, can you tell me your name? Sarah. Sarah Chen. I'm 26. I'm from Atlanta. I was hiking the AT. Northbound. I started in March. Okay, Sarah, you're doing great. Can you tell me what you're hiding from? Is there someone else there? An animal? Not someone. Not animal. Something else. Something that doesn't belong here. Something that followed me from the trail. It's been following me for 3 days. I thought I was imagining it. I thought it was exhaustion. But it's real. It's outside right now. I can hear it. I checked the GPS. The signal was weak, bouncing off cell towers, but it was consistent. She was stationary, somewhere in a dense part of the forest, off the trail by about 200 meters. Sarah, I'm going to send help. I need you to stay on the line. Can you tell me exactly where you are? Landmarks, trail markers? I'm in a hollow, off the trail. There's a fallen tree, really big, maybe 3 feet across. I'm underneath it, in the roots. There's a space here, like a cave. I crawled in when I heard it coming. Sarah, help is on the way. I'm dispatching a search and rescue team now. They'll be there as soon as they can. But it's going to take time. The trail is 10 miles from the nearest road. Can you stay hidden? Can you stay quiet? I've been quiet for 6 hours. It hasn't found me yet, but it knows I'm here. It can smell me. I can feel it smelling me. I can feel it smelling me. I didn't know what to say to that. In 31 years, I'd heard people say a lot of strange things under stress. But there was something in Sarah's voice that wasn't stress. It was certainty. The kind of certainty that comes from direct experience, from seeing something that rewires your understanding of what's possible. Sarah, can you describe what you're hearing? What you're seeing? I can't see it. It's dark, but I can hear it. It moves slow, deliberate, like it's searching, like it's patrolling. It stops sometimes, listens, then moves again. It's been doing this for hours. Back and forth, waiting for me to make a sound. Is it human, Sarah? Could it be another hiker? Someone lost? No, it's not human. I saw it yesterday. On the trail, it was standing on a ridge, looking down at me. It was tall, too tall, and thin. And it had too many joints. Its arms bent wrong. Its neck was too long. And its face. She stopped. The breathing in the background, that deep, slow, non-human breathing, seemed to get louder. Closer. Sarah? Sarah, are you still there? It's getting closer, she whispered. I think it heard me. I think. Silence. Not a disconnect. The line was still open. I could hear the ambient noise of the forest, wind and leaves, the distant sound of water, and that's breathing. Closer now, much closer. So close I could hear individual exhalations, each one lasting 5, 6, 7 seconds, followed by an inhalation that seemed to pull the air out of the phone itself. Sarah? My voice was louder than I intended. I was gripping the headset so tight my hand hurt. Sarah, talk to me. Are you there? Nothing. Just the breathing. And then, I will never forget this sound as long as I live. A voice. Not Sarah's voice. Something else. Something that spoke with multiple tones simultaneously. Like a chord played on a piano where every key is slightly out of tune with the others. She is quiet now, it said. She learned to be quiet. She was loud before, singing, talking to herself, walking with heavy feet. But she learned. They all learn eventually. The quiet ones stay. The loud ones, they become part of the trail, part of the markers, part of the path. I was frozen. Every protocol I'd learned, every training I'd received, every instinct I'd developed over 3 decades, all of it vanished. I was just a person in a room listening to something that shouldn't exist, speak through a phone line from a forest 10 miles from the nearest road. What are you? I whispered. I didn't mean to whisper. It just came out that way. The thing laughed. Not a human laugh. A sound like rocks grinding together, like trees falling, like the earth itself cracking under pressure. I am the trail, it said. I am the white blaze. I am the path that leads between. I was here before the first human walked. I will be here after the last human falls. I am what remains when the walking stops. I am what watches, what evaluates, what waits. Where is Sarah as learning? Sarah is becoming quiet. Sarah will stay, or Sarah will become part of the path. That is the choice. That is always the choice. Walk quietly, walk lightly, or become the way for others to walk. The line went dead, not static, just dead. The GPS signal vanished. The call duration read 7 minutes and 23 seconds. I sat there. Darno came back from the break room, coffee in hand, saw my face, asked what was wrong. I couldn't answer. I dispatched search and rescue. I gave them the coordinates. I stayed on the line with the team as they hiked in, as they searched the hollow, as they found the fallen tree, the space in the roots, the signs that someone had been there, a sleeping bag, a pack, food wrappers, a journal. They didn't find Sarah. They didn't find anything else. No footprints but hers. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just an empty hollow, a fallen tree. and the silence of a forest that seemed to be holding its breath. They searched for 3 days. Grid pattern, dogs, helicopters, nothing. Sarah Chen was entered into the missing persons database. Her family in Atlanta was notified. The case remains open. But I know what happened. I heard it. I heard that voice, that thing, that presence that calls itself the trail. I heard it tell me that Sarah was learning to be quiet, that she would stay or become part of the path. I retired 6 months later, 6 months early. I couldn't do it anymore. Every call, every voice in my headset, I heard that other voice underneath. The grinding laugh, the multiple tones, the thing that watches and waits and offers a choice that isn't a choice. I moved to the coast, Wilmington, North Carolina, flat land, no mountains, no forests. I can see the horizon from my apartment window. I can hear the ocean. I sleep with a white noise machine and every light in the apartment on. But sometimes at 2:37 a.m., my phone rings. Not my work phone, I don't have one anymore. My personal phone, a number I don't recognize. And when I answer, there's no one there, just breathing, deep, slow, patient, and underneath it, faint, so faint I might be imagining it, that voice. Walk quietly, it says, or become the path. I hang up. I pull the covers over my head. I wait for morning. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know this. I spent 31 years helping people in emergencies. I talked them through the worst moments of their lives. I was their voice in the dark, their connection to help, their lifeline. But that night, with Sarah Chen, I was just a witness. Just someone who listened while something else made a choice for her. And I couldn't do anything. I couldn't save her. I couldn't even understand what was happening until it was too late. The trail is still there. The AT, 2,000 miles of forest and ridge and hollow. People still walk it. People still disappear. And somewhere, in the quiet places, in the hollows off the trail, something still waits. Something that evaluates. Something that evaluates. Something that offers a choice that isn't a choice. Walk quietly, or become the path. I don't walk anymore. I don't hike. I don't go anywhere. I can't see the horizon, but I know that the trail is longer than 2,000 miles, that it goes places maps don't show, that it connects to something older than the mountains themselves. And I know that somewhere in one of those places, Sarah Chen is still learning to be quiet. Or she's part of the path now, part of the white blaze, part of the way for others to walk. I hope she's quiet. I hope she stayed. Because the alternative is something I can't think about without wanting to scream.
My name is Lucy Brennan. I'm 29. I'm a wildlife biologist. I work for the National Park Service, studying black bear populations in the Appalachian Mountains. I've spent more nights in the woods than most people spend in their own beds. I've been charged by a bear. I've been treed by a boar. I've woken up with a rattlesnake in my sleeping bag. Well, near my sleeping bag, but close enough. I'm not someone who scares easy. The woods are my office. The forest is my home. I understand the animals, the plants, the weather patterns, the ecology. I know what's dangerous and what's not. I know the difference between a threat and a shadow. But I don't understand what I found in October of 2021. And I don't think I ever will. I was doing a survey. Black bear denning behavior, pre-hibernation movement patterns. I was working in the Mahoosuk Range, near the Maine, New Hampshire border. The AT runs through there. It's one of the hardest sections of the whole trail, steep and rocky and exposed, known as the hardest mile to through hikers. I wasn't hiking the trail, but I used it for access, moving along it to reach my survey sites, then bushwhacking into the forest to set up camera traps and collect scat samples. I was based out of a shelter called Speck Pond. It's a lean-to near a small alpine pond above tree line, exposed to the weather. Beautiful in good conditions. Brutal in bad. I was there for 2 weeks, camping nearby, working the ridges and hollows during the day, returning to the shelter at night to cook dinner and record my data. On my 5th night, I found the journal. It was in the shelter, tucked behind a loose board in the back wall, hidden, as if someone had placed it there deliberately, wanting it to be found, but not immediately. The cover was leather, old, water-stained. Inside, the pages were filled with handwriting. Dense, cramped, written in what looked like pencil, the lines sometimes overlapping where the writer had run out of space and written over previous entries. The first pages were dated September 1987. The writer was a man named Thomas, no last name given. He was hiking the AT, northbound, attempting a through hike. The early entries were normal, trail conditions, weather, encounters with other hikers, the usual mundane details of life on the trail. But as the entries progressed, something changed. The handwriting got tighter, more frantic. The entries got longer, more detailed, more focused on something Thomas called the Watchers. September 23, 1987. Saw one today. On the ridge above Carlow, standing still, watching. Not a hiker. No pack, no gear. Just standing there in clothes that looked wrong for the weather. Too thin, too light. I waved. It didn't wave back. Just stood there until I looked away, and when I looked back, it was gone. Not walked away, gone. Like it was never there. September 28, 1987. They're getting closer. I see them every day now, on ridges, in hollows, standing at the edge of the forest where the trail passes through clearings. Always standing still, always watching, always gone when I look directly at them. But I can feel them. Even when I can't see them, I can feel them. Evaluating, waiting. I don't know for what. October 3rd, 1987. I found a structure today. Off the trail, maybe half a mile. A circle of stones, maybe 10 feet across. White stones. And in the center, a tree. Dead, but standing. White bark. White leaves. White roots that seem to go deep, deeper than they should. And on every surface, the stones, the tree, the ground, white blazes, thousands of them, painted, carved, burned. The AT symbol repeated endlessly. I didn't go inside the circle. Something stopped me. Something in my gut, deeper than thought, said don't cross that line. I took a picture. I'll develop it when I get to town. October 5th, 1987. The picture came back. The structure is there. The stones, the tree, the blazes. But there's something else in the picture. Something I didn't see when I was there. Figures. Standing in the trees around the circle. Watching, evaluating. Their faces are wrong. Too long, too thin. Their eyes are white, like the tree, like the stones. I counted 12 of them in the photograph. 12 watchers, waiting for what? The entries continued, growing more frantic, more paranoid, more detailed in their descriptions of the watchers. The structures, the white blazes that seemed to appear everywhere. On trees, on rocks, on the ground, even on the shelter walls. Thomas wrote about other hikers who saw things, who heard things, who disappeared or quit the trail without explanation. He wrote about a woman named Elaine who followed a white blaze off the trail and was never seen again. He wrote about a man named Robert who woke up screaming every night for a week, then walked into the forest one morning and didn't come back. Then, on October 12, 1987, The entry stopped. Mid-sentence. The last page read, "I found another structure today, bigger than the first. A whole clearing this time filled with white, and in the center, not a tree. A door. A white door standing upright with no wall around it. Just the door frame and the door. Closed, waiting. I know what's behind it. I know what the watchers want. They want me to open it. They want me to walk in it. They want me to walk through." And I think, that's where it ended, mid-thought. The rest of the pages were blank. The journal had been hidden in the shelter wall for 34 years. I read it 3 times. The first time, I was skeptical. I told myself it was a creative writing project, a hoax, a piece of trail folklore that someone had manufactured for entertainment. The second time, I was disturbed. The details were too specific, too consistent with things I'd heard from other hikers, other biologists, other people who spent time in these mountains. The third time, I was scared, because I recognized something in Thomas's handwriting. The way the letters changed as the entries progressed, becoming less human, more geometric, more like the white blaze symbol itself. As if the writing were being influenced by something. As if the symbol were rewriting the writer. I put the journal back where I found it. I told myself I was respecting the historical record, preserving it for future researchers. The truth was simpler. I didn't want it near me. I didn't want to touch it. I didn't want to be associated with whatever was in those pages. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my tent listening to the wind on the pond, the call of a loon, the rustle of small animals in the undergrowth. Normal forest sounds, comforting, familiar, the soundtrack of my professional life. Then I heard something else. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, moving around the shelter, not on the trail, in the rocks. Above tree line where the ground is nothing but broken stone and sparse vegetation. No one walks there at night. No one walks there at night. No one walks there at all, except to reach the shelter. I unzipped my tent. I shined my headlamp toward the sound. There was a figure on the ridge above the shelter, standing still, watching. Human-shaped, but wrong. Too tall, too thin. The proportions stretched in a way that made my eyes water to look at directly. It was wearing something white, not clothing. Something that looked like it was part of the figure itself, like the white bark of a birch tree, like the white stones in Thomas's journal. I thought of the journal. I thought of Thomas. I thought of Elaine and Robert and all the others who had seen something and walked into the forest and never come back. I ducked back into my tent. I zipped it shut. I turned off my headlamp. I lay in the dark, shaking, telling myself it was a trick of the light. A bear standing on its hind legs, a thru hiker in a white rain suit, anything but what it looked like. The footsteps came closer. I could hear them on the rocks around the shelter, circling, stopping, listening, then moving again, circling, stopping. I held my breath. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. Eventually the footsteps stopped. I don't know when. I lost track of time. I might have passed out from fear or exhaustion or the altitude. When I woke up, it was morning. The sun was up. The pond was calm. The shelter was empty. I packed my gear in 10 minutes. I left the journal where it was. I hiked out to the nearest road, hitched a ride to the nearest town, and I didn't go back. I told my supervisor I was sick. I took 2 weeks of leave. I sat in my apartment in Nashville and stared at the walls and tried to convince myself that what I'd seen was a bear, a hiker, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and altitude and the power of suggestion from reading a disturbing journal. But I couldn't convince myself, because I knew what I'd seen, and I knew that the figure on the ridge was one of Thomas's watchers, that it had been standing there for 34 years, waiting for someone to find the journal, to read it, to understand, that the journal was bait, that I had taken it. I went back to work eventually. I still study bears. I still spend nights in the woods. But I don't go near the AT anymore. I don't go near shelters. I don't read journals I find hidden in walls. And I don't look at white blazes the way I used to, because now I see them everywhere, not just on the trail, in the forest, on trees that have never been near the AT, on rocks and streams, on the bark of trees in my survey sites, miles from any trail. I see them, and I know that the watchers are still out there, still waiting, still evaluating. And that somewhere, in a clearing I haven't found yet, there's a white door standing in the forest waiting for someone to open it. I won't be that someone. I won't follow the blazes off the trail. I won't investigate the structures or photograph the circles of white stones. I'll do my job, study my bears, and keep my eyes on the ground in front of me. But sometimes when I'm setting up a camera trap in a remote hollow, when the light is fading and the forest is getting dark, I feel it. The evaluation, the watching, the presence of something that has been in these mountains since before the first bear, before the first tree, before the first human walked the ridges and gave names to what they feared. And I freeze. I don't look up. I don't shine my light toward the ridge. I just freeze, and I wait, and I hope, I pray, that whatever is watching will decide I'm not worth the trouble, that I'm too loud, too busy, too full of the noise of living to be interesting. Sometimes it works, the feeling passes. I finish my work and hike out and drive home and try to sleep. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the feeling stays with me for days, weeks. A low-grade hum of being watched that no amount of distraction can shake. And in those times I see the white blazes more clearly. I see them in the patterns of dust on my windowsill, in the cracks in the sidewalk, in the arrangement of stars on a clear night. They're a map, I think, a map of something, a path that leads somewhere, and the watchers are the guides, or the guards, or the bait. I don't know which. I don't want to know. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this. I found a journal that was hidden for 34 years, and I read it, and now I'm part of the story. Whether I want to be or not, the watchers know my name now. They know my face. They've evaluated me, and they've decided for now to let me walk. But I don't know how long that will last. I don't know what the criteria are. I don't know what happens when they decide someone has seen too much, knows too much, is too dangerous to let go. I just know that every time I see a white blaze where it shouldn't be, I feel a cold finger trace my spine. And I know that someday, probably soon, I'm going to find a clearing. A circle of white stones, a white tree, or a white door standing in the forest, waiting. And when that day comes, I don't know if I'll have the strength to walk away.
My name is Calvin Hobbs. Everyone calls me Cal. I'm 63 years old. I retired in 2021 after 22 years as a trail maintainer for the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, responsible for a 40-mile section in southwestern Virginia from Damascus to the Tennessee border. Before that, I was a carpenter. Before that, I was in the Army. Before that, I was a kid in a small town in Kentucky who didn't know what he wanted to do with his life, and still doesn't, most days. I'm not someone who scares easy. I've cleared blowdowns in ice storms, hanging from ropes 50 feet above rocky ground. I've confronted black bears on the trail, stood my ground, watched them wander off, I've worked through heat exhaustion, hypothermia, a broken rib from a falling branch. The trail is my life. The trail is my identity. I am the person who keeps the path clear, the blazes visible, the shelters safe. I am the invisible hand that makes the AT possible. But I don't maintain anymore. I don't even hike. I live in a small house in Damascus, 2 blocks from the trail, and I don't go near it. Because I know something now that I didn't know for 22 years. Something that was there the whole time, hiding in plain sight, waiting for me to notice. The white blazes are wrong. Not all of them. Most of them are fine. Painted by volunteers, maintained by crews, the standard 2x6-inch rectangle on trees, rocks, posts. Clear, visible, consistent. The trail markers that have guided millions of hikers for nearly a century. But some of them aren't right. Some of them are too old. Some of them are in the wrong places. Some of them lead to places the trail doesn't go. And some of them, the ones that keep me up at night, are new. Fresh paint on trees that I know for a fact no one has maintained. Fresh paint in places no hiker would go. Fresh paint that appears overnight, in weather, in conditions, in locations that make human application impossible. I noticed the first one in 2015. I was doing a routine inspection of my section, checking blazes, clearing brush, looking for erosion damage. I was near a place called The Scales, a high meadow area where cattle used to be weighed before being driven to market. It's a beautiful spot, open, views for miles, one of my favorite places on the whole trail. I found a blaze on a tree that shouldn't have had one. The tree was a dead oak, standing but hollow, clearly dead for years. The blaze on it was fresh, bright white, the paint still slightly tacky, the edges crisp. But the tree was on the wrong side of the trail, 20 feet off the path, in a direction no hiker would go, in terrain that led to a steep drop-off. I checked my records. No one had reported painting that blaze. No volunteer crew had been in that area for months. The weather had been dry for a week. No rain to wash away evidence of whoever had painted it. But there were no footprints, no broken branches, no signs of human presence. Just the blaze, fresh and white, on a dead tree leading nowhere. I painted over it. Standard procedure for a misplaced blaze. I used the official paint, the right color, covered the white with brown that matched the tree bark. I made a note in my log. I moved on. The next week, the blaze was back. Same tree, same position, fresh white paint covering my brown cover-up. And this time, there was something else. A second blaze, 10 feet further into the forest. And a third, 10 feet beyond that. A line of blazes leading away from the trail into the trees toward the drop-off. I didn't paint over them. I reported them to my supervisor. He came out, looked at them, shrugged. "Kids," he said, "or a hiker with a paint pen messing around. We'll remove them at the next work party." They were never removed. Every time a crew went out to take them down, they found them repainted. Fresh, new, leading deeper into the forest each time. My supervisor stopped sending crews. "Not worth the resources," he said. "Just ignore them. Hikers know the trail. They won't follow a few misplaced blazes, but hikers did follow them." I found out later, from SAR reports, from hiker forums, from the kind of quiet conversations that happen in trail towns when something goes wrong. 3 hikers had followed those blazes in 2015. 2 made it back, confused, disoriented, with stories of getting lost in terrain they shouldn't have been able to get lost in. 1 didn't make it back, a woman named Patricia, 34, from Ohio. She followed the blazes off the trail and was found 3 weeks later at the bottom of the drop-off, her body broken on rocks that were nowhere near the line of blazes she'd been following. I found more after that. Not many. 1 or 2 a year, always in remote areas, always on trees that shouldn't have been marked, always leading away from the trail into terrain that got progressively more difficult, more dangerous, more wrong. I started keeping a map, pinning the locations, looking for patterns. There was a pattern. The blazes formed lines, not straight lines, but curves, arcs, spirals that seemed to converge on specific points in the landscape. Points that didn't correspond to any known feature, any shelter, any water source, any destination that made sense. I showed the map to my supervisor in 2018. He looked at it, frowned, told me I was spending too much time alone in the woods. You're seeing patterns where there aren't any, Cal. It's called pareidolia, the brain finding order in randomness. Take a vacation, see a doctor. I didn't take a vacation. I kept mapping. And in 2019, I found the convergence point. It was in a hollow, deep in the forest, miles from any trail, any road, any human structure. I'd followed a line of misplaced blazes for 3 hours, bushwhacking through brush so thick I needed a machete, descending into terrain that got steeper, darker, wetter with every step. The blazes were fresh. I could smell the paint. But there were no footprints, no broken branches, no signs of whoever, whatever had placed them. The hollow was circular, maybe 100 feet across, surrounded by trees so old their trunks were wider than my outstretched arms. The ground was covered in white. Not snow, not flowers. White stones, white bones, white feathers, white bark, stripped from trees and arranged in patterns. And in the center, a structure, not a shelter, not a building, a frame, a door frame, standing upright, with no wall, no building, no structure around it. Just the frame and a door, closed, white, painted with the blaze symbol repeated endlessly, overlapping, covering every inch of the surface. I stood at the edge of the hollow for a long time. I didn't cross the line of white stones that circled the structure. Something stopped me. The same thing that had stopped me every time I found a misplaced blaze, a feeling in my gut, deeper than thought, that said, don't cross, don't enter, don't open. But I looked hard, and I saw things in the white patterns on the ground that I couldn't explain. Shapes, figures, human forms laid out in white stones, in positions that suggested movement, dance, ritual, and among them, newer shapes. Shapes that looked like hikers, like people with packs, with trekking poles, with the distinctive posture of someone who has walked a long way. Some of the shapes were complete. Some were missing parts, a head, an arm, a leg, as if the arrangement was still in progress, still being built, still waiting for the final pieces. I ran. I don't remember making the decision. I just ran, back through the brush, up the slope, following the misplaced blazes in reverse, back to the trail, back to my truck, back to Damascus. I didn't report what I'd found. I didn't tell my supervisor. I didn't tell anyone. I retired 2 years later. I told everyone it was my knees, my back, my age. The truth was simpler. I couldn't go back into those woods. I couldn't look at another white blaze without wondering if it was real or if it was one of them. I couldn't maintain a trail that I knew led to places no human should go. But I still live in Damascus. I still see the trail every day. I still watch the hikers come through, northbound in spring, southbound in fall, full of hope and determination and the belief that the trail is just a trail, that the blazes are just markers, that the woods are just woods. I want to tell them. I want to grab them by the shoulders and shake them and tell them to look closer, to question every blaze that seems slightly off, to never follow a marker that leads away from the known path. But I don't, because they wouldn't believe me, because I wouldn't have believed me 20 years ago, because some things have to be seen to be believed, and some things, once seen, can never be unseen. I still see the blazes, not just on the trail, everywhere, on trees in my yard, on the side of my house, on the road signs in town, on the white lines painted on the highway. They're a map, I think. A map of something vast and old and patient. A map that leads to doors standing in empty hollows, to structures made of white stones and white bones, to places where the trail doesn't end but begins. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this. I maintained the Appalachian Trail for 22 years. I painted thousands of blazes. I cleared miles of path. I thought I was preserving something human, something good, something that connected people to the wilderness in a way that was safe and controlled and manageable. I was wrong. The trail isn't human. The trail is older than us. The blazes aren't just markers. They're invitations. They're bait. They're the first step in a path that leads somewhere else, somewhere that isn't on any map, somewhere that has been waiting for walkers since before the first human looked at a mountain and wondered what was on the other side. And the trail maintainers, me, my colleagues, the thousands of volunteers who give their time and sweat and blood to keep the path clear. We're not preserving the trail, we're feeding it. We're making it easier for people to walk into the mouth of something that looks like a path, but is actually a throat. I don't paint blazes anymore. I don't clear brush. I don't maintain anything. I sit in my house in Damascus and I watch the hikers walk by. And I pray, I actually pray, me who hasn't been in a church since I was 12, that they make it through, that they don't see the misplaced blazes, that they don't follow the lines that lead to the hollows, that they don't find the doors, but some of them will. Some of them always do. And the trail will keep growing, keep reaching, keep inviting, because that's what it does. That's what it's always done. And we, the maintainers, the hikers, the people who think we own the wilderness, we're just the latest in a long line of walkers who thought they were exploring, when really we were being explored. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know that every time I see a white blaze where it shouldn't be, I feel the trail reaching out. And I know that someday, probably soon, I'm going to follow one. Not because I want to, because I won't be able to stop myself. Because the map is complete, and I'm one of the pieces, and the door in the hollow is waiting for the last stone to be placed. When that day comes, I hope someone finds this. I hope someone reads it and understands. I hope someone has the strength to stay away from the misplaced blazes, to stay on the known path, to keep walking until the trail ends and the real world begins. Because the alternative, the hollow, the door, the white, is waiting, and it's been waiting for a very long time.
My name is Rebecca Morrison. Everyone calls me Beck. I'm 44 years old. I worked as a law enforcement park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park from 2008 to 2020. 12 years. I patrolled the backcountry, enforced regulations, assisted hikers, searched for the lost, recovered the dead. I have a badge in a drawer that I haven't looked at in 3 years. I have a uniform that I burned. I have memories that I can't share with anyone who hasn't been there. I'm not someone who scares easy. I've faced armed poachers in the dark. I've rappelled into ravines to recover bodies. I've spent nights alone in the backcountry with nothing but a radio and a sidearm, listening to the forest settle around me like a blanket. I've seen things that would break most people, the aftermath of bear attacks, the remains of suicides, the slow decay of someone who went for a walk and never came back. But I never saw anything like what I saw on September 3rd, 2019, and I never told anyone about it. Until now, it was a search. Standard procedure. A hiker had been reported missing. A man named David Park, 31, from Knoxville section hiking the AT through the Smokies. He'd been due at a shelter 3 days prior. He hadn't shown up. His wife had called it in. We initiated a search the next morning. I was the lead ranger on the search team. 3 other rangers, 2 volunteers from a local SAR group, a search dog named Buster who was the best tracker I'd ever worked with. We started at the last known location, a shelter called Derrick Knob where David had signed the register 4 days earlier. We followed the trail, looking for signs, calling his name, checking side trails and water sources. We found nothing for 2 days. No sign of David, no gear, no clothing, no footprints that didn't belong to other hikers. Buster caught a scent at one point near a stream crossing, but lost it almost immediately, whining, circling, confused in a way I'd never seen him behave before. On the third day, we expanded the search area. I took Buster and one volunteer, a man named Greg, a retired firefighter who'd been doing SAR work for 15 years, and we bushwhacked into a hollow off the main trail. It was steep, overgrown, not a place any hiker would go intentionally. The people get lost. People panic. People follow streams downhill thinking they'll find help and end up in places no one would think to look. The hollow was dark, the canopy was thick, the undergrowth dense, the light filtered to a green twilight even at midday. Buster was on a leash, pulling hard, whining, his tail tucked, his ears flat. He didn't want to go into that hollow. I've never seen a search dog refuse a scent, but Buster refused. He sat down. He wouldn't move. "Something's wrong," Greg said. He was a big man, calm, unflappable, but his voice was tight. "Beck, I don't like this place." "Neither do I said. "But we've got a missing hiker. We need to check it." We left Buster at the edge of the hollow, tied to a tree, whining and scratching at the ground. Greg and I pushed forward, machetes out, cutting through brush that seemed to grow back as fast as we cleared it. The hollow got steeper, darker, wetter. The air was thick with the smell of decay, not the clean smell of fallen leaves, but something older, deeper. The smell of things that had been dead for a very long time. We found the structure at the bottom of the hollow. It was a circle of stones, white stones arranged in a ring maybe 20 feet across. In the center, a tree, dead but standing, its bark white, its branches white, its roots visible above the ground like white fingers grasping at the earth. And on every surface, the stones, the tree, the ground, white blazes, hundreds of them, painted, carved, burned into the wood and stone and soil. I knew what it was. I'd heard the stories. Every ranger has. The structures in the woods, the circles of white, the places where hikers disappear and are never found. I'd always dismissed them as folklore, as the kind of stories that grow in the dark spaces between known facts, filling the gaps with nightmare. But I was looking at one, and it was real. Greg saw it too. He stopped walking. He was breathing hard, not from exertion, from fear. "Beck," he said, "we need to go. We need to go now." "There's a missing hiker," I said. But my voice was weak. I could feel something in that hollow, a weight, a presence, the same feeling I'd had in other places in the park, the feeling of being watched, of being evaluated, of being found wanting. "We're not going to find him here," Greg said. "Not alive. Maybe not at all. Beck, please. I've got a bad feeling. The worst feeling I've ever had." I wanted to agree. I wanted to turn around, climb out of that hollow, call off the search, go back to my truck and drive until I couldn't see mountains anymore. But I was a ranger. I had a duty. A missing hiker. A family waiting. I couldn't walk away because of a bad feeling. I stepped into the circle. The world changed, not dramatically, not with a flash of light or a sound, just shifted. The colors were wrong. The green of the leaves was too green, the white of the stones too white, the shadows too dark, too solid, too present. The air was thicker, harder to breathe, like trying to inhale through a wet cloth. And the silence was absolute. No insects, no birds, no wind. Just the sound of my own heartbeat, loud in my ears, and Greg's breathing behind me, ragged and scared. I looked at the tree, the white tree, and I saw something in the bark that I hadn't seen from outside the circle. Faces, human faces, carved or grown or somehow part of the wood itself. Dozens of them, hundreds, stretched, distorted, mouths open in silent screams, eyes wide with something that wasn't fear. It was recognition. The look of someone who has seen something they can't unsee, who understands something that can't be understood. And among the faces, newer ones, clearer ones, I saw David Park. I knew it was him. I'd seen his photograph, his driver's license, the picture his wife had given us. His face was in the bark, eyes open, mouth slightly open as if he were about to speak, as if he were trying to tell me something. I reached out. I don't know why. I shouldn't have. I knew I shouldn't have. But I reached out and touched the bark where his face was, and I felt something push back, not physical pressure. Something else, a presence, a consciousness. David's consciousness, or what was left of it, trapped in the wood, in the white, in the circle. Beck! Greg's voice sharp, urgent. Beck, get out of there, now. I pulled my hand back. The bark was cold, colder than anything I'd ever touched. The cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed. I stumbled backward, out of the circle, and the world snapped back to normal. Colors right, sounds returning. The weight lifting from my chest. Greg grabbed my arm. He was shaking. We need to go right now. Don't look back, don't stop, just go. We ran. Up the hollow, through the brush, back to Buster, who was still whining, still scratching, his paws bloody from trying to dig through the ground. We untied him and ran, all three of us, human and dog, running from something we couldn't see but could feel, something that was behind us, around us, in the very air we were breathing. We made it to the trail, to the known path, to the white blazes that were normal, human, safe. We stopped, gasping, leaning on trees. Buster collapsed on the ground, tongue lolling, eyes wide with animal terror. I called it in. I reported finding a structure, a possible connection to the missing hiker, coordinates for follow-up. I didn't describe what I'd seen. I didn't mention the faces. I didn't say that I touched the tree and felt a human consciousness trapped in the wood. I said we'd found a stone circle, possibly ceremonial, possibly related to the disappearance. Standard report. Professional language. The kind of language that keeps you employed, that keeps you from being labeled unstable, that keeps the machinery of search and rescue moving forward. They found David Park 3 days later. Or what was left of him. His body was at the bottom of a ravine, miles from the hollow, in terrain that made no sense given the search area. The official cause of death was a fall. Accidental. He'd gotten lost, panicked, fallen. It happens all the time. But I know what I saw in that tree. I know what I felt. David didn't fall. David walked into that circle, or was led into it, or was taken. And something in that circle, something that wears the shape of a tree, that collects faces like a hunter collects trophies, took him. Took his body, maybe. Took something else, definitely. Something that was still in the bark, still trying to speak, still trapped in the white. I resigned 6 months later. I told them it was burnout, the stress of the job, the accumulation of trauma, the need for a change. They gave me a plaque, a pension, a handshake from the superintendent. I smiled and said thank you, and drove home and threw the plaque in the trash and burned my uniform in the backyard. I don't go into the woods anymore. I don't hike. I don't camp. I live in a condo in Knoxville on the 5th floor with a view of the city and no trees in sight. I sleep with the lights on. I keep a radio playing all night. Talk radio, news, anything with human voices. I don't like silence. Silence is where I hear it. The breathing, the waiting, the evaluation, but I still see the white blazes. None on the trail. I don't go near the trail. I see them in the tile patterns in my bathroom, in the arrangement of clouds on a cloudy day, in the cracks in the sidewalk, in the stains on the ceiling, in the random patterns of noise on a television screen. They're a map, a path. a network of connections that leads to circles and hollows, to trees with faces, to doors standing in empty clearings. And I know that the map is growing, that more blazes appear every year, and more places leading to more circles, collecting more faces. I know that the number of missing hikers in the Smokies has been increasing slowly, steadily, year over year. The official statistics blame it on increased visitation, on social media drawing inexperienced hikers into dangerous terrain, on climate change making weather more unpredictable. But I know. I was there. I saw the tree. I touched the bark. I felt David Park's consciousness push back against my hand, trying to speak, trying to warn me, trying to tell me something that I couldn't understand. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this. I spent 12 years protecting people in the wilderness. I carried a badge and a gun and the authority of the federal government, and I thought that meant something. I thought it meant I could keep people safe, that I could find the lost, that I could bring the dead back to their families. I was wrong. The wilderness doesn't need my protection. The wilderness doesn't care about my badge or my gun or my authority. The wilderness is older than all of it, and it has its own rules, its own hungers, its own ways of collecting what it wants. And what it wants, I think, is us, our faces, our voices, our consciousness trapped in white bark and white stone, part of a structure that grows with every addition, every disappearance, every hiker who follows a misplaced blaze into a hollow and doesn't come back. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know if it can be stopped. I just know that I'm done being part of it. I'm done walking into hollows, done touching trees, done pretending that my badge and my training and my rationality mean anything in the face of something that collects human faces like a child collects stamps. If you're reading this and you're a hiker and you're on the AT and you see a blaze that looks wrong, too fresh, too bright in a place that doesn't make sense, don't follow it. Turn around. Go back. Stay on the known path, no matter how tempting the alternative looks, because the alternative is a circle of white stones and a tree with your face in the bark, and a consciousness that will spend eternity trying to scream a warning that no one will hear. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know that David Park is still in that tree, and I know that I'm still in that hollow, in some way. Some part of me left behind when I touched the bark and felt him push back. And I know that someday, probably soon, I'm going to find another circle, another tree, another face that looks like mine, frozen in white wood, mouth open in a scream that will never end. When that day comes, I hope someone remembers this. I hope someone understands. I hope someone has the strength to stay away from the white blazes that lead to hollows, to circles, to trees with faces. Because once you see them, you can't unsee them. And once they see you, you're part of the collection, whether you want to be or not.
My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez. I am 41 years old. I am a licensed clinical psychologist with a private practice in Charlottesville, Virginia. I specialize in trauma recovery, particularly for first responders and outdoor professionals, rangers, SAR personnel, wildland firefighters. I spent 10 years working for the National Park Service as a staff psychologist before going into private practice. I've treated PTSD in people who have seen things I can't imagine. I've sat with grief that has no bottom. I've learned that the human mind is capable of creating realities that are as real as anything external, that trauma can rewrite perception in ways that are indistinguishable from objective experience. I have always believed that my job is to help people integrate their experiences, to find meaning in chaos, to build narratives that allow them to function in a world that doesn't always make sense. I have never believed in the supernatural. I have never believed that external reality can be genuinely altered by anything other than physical forces. I have treated people who claim to see ghosts, to be haunted, to have encountered things that shouldn't exist. And I have helped them understand that these experiences are products of their minds. Powerful, real, meaningful, but internal rather than external. I was wrong, not about my patience, not about the mind's capacity to create. I was wrong about the boundary between internal and external, about the nature of reality itself, about the arrogance of thinking that because I understand psychology, I understand everything. This happened in June of 2022. I was hiking the AT. Not as a thru hiker, I didn't have that kind of time, but as a section hiker, doing the Virginia portion over a series of long weekends. I needed it. The practice was consuming me. Too many patients, too much trauma, too many stories of darkness that I was trying to hold without letting them drown me. The trail was my therapy, my escape, my proof that the world was still beautiful, still ordered, still rational. I was on a 4-day section from Rockfish Gap to Waynesboro. Day 2, I camped at a shelter called Calf Mountain. It was a Tuesday night, midweek, off-season. I had the shelter to myself. I set up my tent nearby, cooked dinner, watched the sunset paint the ridges in shades of orange and purple. I felt good, grounded, connected to something larger than myself. I woke at 3 a.m. No reason, no sound. Just awake, alert, my heart rate elevated, my senses heightened. The forest was silent, no wind, no insects, no night sounds, just the weight of darkness pressing down. I unzipped my tent. The moon was high, nearly full, turning the world into a landscape of silver and black. And standing at the edge of the clearing where the forest began was a figure. It was human-shaped. That much I could see. The proportions were wrong. Too tall, too thin. The arms too long, hanging past the knees. The neck too long. The head too long. It was wearing something white, not clothing. Something that seemed to be part of it, like bark, like stone, like the white of old bone. I should have been terrified. Every instinct should have screamed at me to run, to hide, to do something. But I wasn't terrified. I was curious. The part of me that had spent 20 years studying the mind, that had built a career on understanding the unusual, the anomalous, the seemingly impossible. That part of me was fascinated. This was something I couldn't explain. Something that didn't fit my frameworks. Something that demanded new understanding. I stepped out of the tent. I walked toward the figure. Not close. I stopped 10 feet away, but close enough to see details. The texture of the white surface, like tree bark but smoother. The absence of features where a face should be. Just white, blank, empty. "Who are you?" I asked. My voice was steady, professional. The voice I used with patients who were dissociating, who needed an anchor to reality. The figure didn't move, didn't speak. But I felt something. A pressure in my mind, not a voice, not a thought, a presence. Something pushing against the boundaries of my consciousness, testing, probing, evaluating. I recognized the sensation. I'd felt it before in therapy sessions when a patient with severe dissociative identity disorder would switch alters. The feeling of another consciousness pressing against my own, trying to communicate through barriers that weren't designed for direct contact. But this wasn't a patient. This was something external. Something that had never been human. "You're not real," I said, not to convince myself. As a test, a hypothesis. "You're a projection." A dissociative episode. Sleep deprivation combined with altitude and the power of suggestion. I've been studying trauma too long. My mind is creating this to process the stress. The figure tilted its head. The movement was wrong. Too smooth. Like a puppet on strings or a video game character with limited animation. And then, I felt it smile. Not saw. Felt. The pressure in my mind changed, became warmer, more amused. "You analyze," the presence said. Not aloud, in my mind. In a voice that was multiple voices, layered, speaking in imperfect unison. "You categorize. You explain. That is your function. your purpose. But you do not understand. You have never understood. You treat the symptoms and ignore the disease. What disease? I asked. I knew I was talking to myself. I knew this was a dissociative episode, a waking dream. My mind's attempt to process stress through narrative. But the narrative was compelling. The presence felt real. And I had learned in my work that sometimes the most therapeutic approach is to engage with the experience, to explore it, to find meaning in the metaphor. The disease of separation, the presence said. The belief that you are distinct, individual, separate from the world around you. You build walls, ego boundaries, you call them, and you believe they protect you. But they imprison you. They cut you off from what you are, from what you could be. I'm a psychologist, I said. I know about ego boundaries. They're necessary. They're what make us functional. Without them, we'd be overwhelmed by stimuli, unable to distinguish self from other, reality from fantasy. Reality from fantasy, the presence repeated. The amusement was stronger now. You use these words as if they were absolutes, as if your reality were the only reality. But there are many realities, Dr. Vasquez. Many layers, many frequencies, and you have spent your life tuning to only one, ignoring the others, dismissing them as pathology. What are you? I asked. If you're real, if this is real, what are you? The figure raised one long arm and pointed, not at me, at the forest, at the trail, at the white blaze painted on a tree 10 feet away. We are the trail, it said. We are the path between. We are what remains when the walking stops. We are the watchers, the evaluators, the collectors. We have been here since before the first human walked. We will be here after the last human falls. We are not malevolent. We are not benevolent. We simply are. And we offer a choice. What choice? To walk the path. To see. To know. To become part of something larger than your individual existence. Or to remain separate. To remain small. To remain safe in your walls, in your categories, in your explanations that explain nothing. I felt the pull, the temptation, the part of me that had always wondered, always questioned, always felt that there was something more, something beyond the measurable, the observable, the explainable. The part that had drawn me to psychology in the first place, the desire to understand the mind, not because I thought it was purely biological, but because I suspected deep down that it was something more. But I also felt fear, real fear, not the fear of a patient having a breakdown, not the fear of a professional facing the unknown, the fear of a human animal facing a predator. The ancient wordless knowledge that some things are dangerous not because they mean harm, but because they are fundamentally incompatible with human existence. No, I said, I'm not interested in your path. I'm not interested in becoming part of something larger. I'm interested in being human, in being separate, in having boundaries and walls and explanations that explain enough to let me function. That's my choice. That's always been my choice. The presence withdrew. The pressure in my mind lessened, became a memory rather than an experience. The figure lowered its arm. And then, slowly, deliberately, it turned and walked into the forest. Not fast, not slow, just walking. Disappearing into the trees, into the darkness, into the space between what I could see and what I couldn't. I stood there until dawn. I didn't move. I didn't think. I just existed in the aftermath of something that had touched my mind and found it wanting. In the morning, I packed my gear and hiked out. I didn't finish the section. I went home. I took a week off from my practice. I sat in my apartment and stared at the walls and tried to process what had happened. I told myself it was a dissociative episode. Sleep deprivation. Altitude. Stress. The perfect storm of factors that can produce vivid hallucinations, false memories, experiences that feel real but aren't. I wrote it up in my journal. I analyzed it using every framework I knew. I treated myself as I would treat a patient, with compassion, with curiosity, with the understanding that the mind creates narratives to protect itself from truths it can't handle. But I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been real, that the figure had been external, that the presence in my mind had been something other than my own subconscious. And then I found the evidence. It was a week later. I was going through my pack, cleaning gear, preparing for a trip I knew I wouldn't take. In the pocket of my rain jacket, I found something I hadn't put there. A small object wrapped in moss, bound with twine made of some fibrous plant material. Inside, a bird's skull, 3 acorns, a piece of quartz, and a photograph, a Polaroid. Faded, old, showing a woman standing on a mountain ridge wearing clothes from another era, her face turned away from the camera. On the back, in faded ink, E2000 1930C. She never came down. I don't own a Polaroid camera. I don't know anyone named ETT. From 1923, I didn't put this in my pack, and yet there it was. Physical evidence of something that shouldn't exist. Proof that creates more questions than answers. I still have it. The bundle, the photograph. I keep them in a locked drawer in my office, behind files and folders, and the detritus of a professional life. I take them out sometimes, late at night, when my last patient has left and the building is quiet. I look at them. I touch them. I try to understand. I can't. I don't have a framework for this. I don't have a theory. I don't have an explanation that explains anything. I still practice psychology. I still treat trauma. I still help people build narratives that allow them to function. But I'm different now. Quieter, more careful. I don't dismiss the anomalous anymore. I don't pathologize the unexplained. I listen. I really listen. Because I know that some of my patients have seen things that are real. That their experiences aren't just products of damaged minds, but encounters with something that exists in the spaces between our categories, our explanations, our carefully constructed realities. And I know that the figure is still out there, still watching, still evaluating, still offering its choice to anyone who walks the trail at night, who looks too long at the white blazes, who wonders what lies beyond the edge of the known path. I don't hike anymore. I don't go into the woods. I stay in the city, in the light, in the noise, where the boundaries between self and other are clear and solid and maintained by the constant pressure of human presence. But sometimes when I'm alone in my office, when the building is quiet and the night is deep, I feel it, the pressure in my mind, the presence, the evaluation. And I hear that voice, those layered voices, speaking in imperfect unison. You chose separation, Dr. Vasquez. You chose walls. We honor your choice. But we are still here. We are always here. And someday when your walls weaken, when your categories fail, when your explanations explain nothing, we will be waiting. We are patient. We have always been patient. And we will be here when you are ready to walk the path. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this. I spent 20 years helping people understand their minds. I thought I understood the boundary between reality and fantasy, between internal and external, between what is and what we imagine, and I was wrong. The boundary is thinner than I thought, more permeable, more dangerous. And on the other side of that boundary, in the spaces between the white blazes, in the hollows off the trail, in the circles of white stones and white bones, something waits, something evaluates, something offers a choice that isn't a choice. I said no. I'm still saying no. I'm still saying no. But I don't know how long I can keep saying it. I don't know what happens when the walls weaken, when the categories fail, when the mind that built the defenses is too tired to maintain them anymore. I just know that when that day comes, I'll feel the pressure again. I'll see the white figure at the edge of the clearing. And I'll have to choose, again and again, until I either walk the path or become part of it. I don't know which choice I'll make. I don't know if the choice is even mine to make. I just know that I'm still here, still separate, still human, for now.
My name is Derek Holloway. Everyone calls me Deke. I'm 38 years old. I'm a sergeant with the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department, assigned to the Mountain Rescue Service. I've been doing SAR work for 14 years. I've recovered bodies from crevasses, from avalanche debris, from cliffs where no human should have been able to fall. I've rappelled into places that would make most people vomit with fear. I've held the hands of dying hikers while we waited for evacuation that came too late. I'm not someone who scares easy, but November 17th, 2021 changed me. Not gradually, not in the way that trauma usually works, creeping up on you over months and years, instantly, permanently, like a switch being flipped in my brain that can never be unflipped. It was a recovery, standard call. Hiker missing on Mount Washington, above treeline in winter conditions. Name was Michael Torres, 34, from Boston, experienced hiker, but not equipped for the weather he'd encountered. A storm had blown in, typical for the presidentials in November, winds gusting to 80, temperature with wind chill around -20. He'd been reported missing by his hiking partner, who'd made it back to the trailhead hypothermic but alive. We mobilized at dawn, 6 of us, 2 teams of 3 approaching from different directions. I was with my regular partner Jax, short for Jackson, but no one calls him that, and a volunteer named Pete who'd been on maybe 20 rescues and thought he knew what he was getting into. We took the Lion Head Trail, the standard winter route. The snow was deep, wind sculpted into drifts that made walking treacherous. Above treeline, the world was white and grey. The sky indistinguishable from the ground, visibility dropping to nothing in the gusts. We were roped together, moving carefully, checking GPS, calling coordinates back to base. We found the first sign of Torres at 5,800 feet, a trekking pole stuck upright in the snowdrift like a marker. No pack, no body, just the pole, standing alone in the white, vibrating in the wind. "Strange," Jack said. He was squinting through his goggles, ice forming on his balaclava. "Why leave the pole? If you're in trouble, you keep your gear. You don't stick a pole in the snow and walk away." "Maybe he fell," Pete said. "Maybe the pole got stuck when he went down." "Maybe," I said, but I didn't think so. The pole was too deliberately placed, too vertical, too much like a marker, like a blaze. We continued. The wind got worse. The visibility dropped to 10 feet, then 5. We were navigating by GPS and instinct, moving through a world that had been reduced to white noise and cold. We found the second sign at 6,000 feet. A glove, left hand, lying on top of the snow, not buried, not blown away. Just lying there, fingers slightly curled, as if it had been placed deliberately. As if someone had set it down and walked away. "This is wrong," Jack said. His voice was tight. I'd worked with him for 8 years. I'd never heard him sound scared. "Deke, this is wrong. No one loses gloves like this, not in these conditions. You lose a glove, you go back for it. You don't keep walking with one hand exposed." "Maybe he was disoriented," Pete said, but his voice wasn't sure anymore. "Maybe hypothermia, paradoxical undressing. You know how it gets." "Paradoxical undressing means you take off your clothes," Jack said, "not your gloves. Not one glove. And you don't arrange them in a line leading up the mountain." He was right. The glove was in a direct line from the trekking pole, like markers, like blazes, leading somewhere. We followed them. I don't know why. We should have called it in, regrouped, approached from a different angle. But we followed them. Pole, glove, then a hat, then a boot, then the other boot. Items arranged in the snow, spaced evenly, leading up the mountain toward the summit, toward the worst of the weather, toward something that waited in the white. The items stopped at 6,200 feet. The wind died. Suddenly, completely, unnaturally. One moment we were fighting gusts that threatened to knock us down. The next, absolute stillness. The snow stopped falling, the clouds parted, and we could see. We were in a hollow, not a natural feature. A depression in the mountain, maybe 50 feet across, sheltered from the wind by walls of snow that had been sculpted into smooth, curved shapes. Not drifts, shapes, not natural formations. Shapes that looked deliberate, designed. In the center of the hollow, a structure made of ice, transparent, blue-white, catching the weak November sun and refracting it into patterns that hurt to look at. It was a frame, a door frame, standing upright in the snow with no wall, no building, nothing around it. Just the frame and a door, closed, made of ice so clear you could see through it to the snow beyond. And on the door, carved into the ice, white blazes. Hundreds of them, the AT symbol repeated endlessly, overlapping, forming patterns that seemed to move when you looked at them directly, that resolved into shapes, faces, figures, hikers with packs when you looked away. "Jesus Christ," Pete whispered. "What the hell is that?" I didn't answer. I was looking at the ground around the structure. The snow was disturbed, not by wind, by feet, human feet, bare feet based on the shape, walking in a circle around the ice frame. The footprints led to the door, stopped, then led away, then circled back. Over and over, a pattern of approach and retreat, as if someone had been trying to decide whether to open the door. And in the snow, near the door, a body, Michael Torres. We knew it was him from the ID in his wallet, which was in his pocket, which was on his body, which was lying face down in the snow, arms outstretched, fingers dug into the ice, as if he'd been trying to claw his way through the door, or away from it. He was naked, not partially undressed, completely naked. His clothes were arranged in a circle around him, folded neatly, as if he'd taken them off deliberately and placed them with care. His skin was white, bloodless, frozen solid. His face, turned slightly to the side, visible in the snow, was contorted in an expression that wasn't fear. It was longing, desire, the look of someone who had seen something they wanted more than life itself. Jax was already on the radio, calling it in, requesting evacuation, trying to maintain professional composure in the face of something that broke every protocol, every expectation, every understanding of how people die in the mountains. But I couldn't move. I was transfixed by the door, by the ice, by the blazes that moved and shifted and formed faces I almost recognized. I felt the pull. The same pull I'd felt in other places, other times, the feeling that there was something on the other side of that door that I needed to see, to know, to understand. I walked toward it. I don't remember making the decision. I just walked through the snow, past Torres's body, past his neatly folded clothes, to the edge of the ice frame. I reached out. I touched the door. Cold, not mountain cold, not winter cold, the cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed, where the concept of warmth is as foreign as the concept of color to someone born blind. And through the ice, through the clear frozen water, I saw something, not snow, not mountain, something else. A landscape that wasn't a landscape, a path that led through spaces that weren't spaces, between trees that weren't trees, toward a light that wasn't light. And on that path, figures, walking, hiking, carrying packs, moving away from me toward the light, toward something that waited at the end of the path. I recognized some of them. Faces I'd seen on missing person posters, names I'd heard in SAR briefings. Hikers who'd disappeared on the AT, in the Whites, in the Smokies, in places scattered along 2,000 miles of trail. They were walking, moving, alive in some sense, in some form, on a path that led somewhere I couldn't follow. And at the end of the path, at the edge of the light, a figure. Tall, thin, white, watching, evaluating. Waiting for the walkers to reach it, to make their choice, to become part of the path or part of the structure or part of something I couldn't name. "Deke," Jax's voice, sharp, urgent, pulling me back. "Deke, get away from there, now!" I pulled my hand back. The ice was stuck to my glove, pulling it off, leaving my bare hand exposed to the cold. I stumbled backward, away from the door, away from the frame, away from the vision of the path and the walkers and the thing that waited at the end. We evacuated Torres's body. We marked the location. We hiked out in silence, none of us speaking, none of us looking back, none of us acknowledging what we'd seen. The official report called it hypothermia, paradoxical undressing, disorientation, a tragic but explainable death in extreme conditions. The ice structure was noted as an unusual ice formation possibly related to wind patterns and temperature gradients. The footprints were attributed to Torres's own movements in his final hours. The neatly arranged clothes were dismissed as a detail distorted by stress and cold. I didn't contradict the report. I signed it. I went back to work. I did 2 more rescues that winter, 3 recoveries, a dozen training exercises. I acted normal. I acted professional. I acted like someone who hadn't touched an ice door and seen a path leading to a light that wasn't light. But I was changed. I am changed. I see the path now, in the snow, in the ice, in the white blazes on the trail that seemed to lead somewhere other than the next shelter, the next water source, the next road. I see the door, standing in hollows, in clearings, in places where no door should be. I see the walkers moving away from me, toward the light, toward the evaluation, toward the thing that waits at the end. I don't do SAR work anymore. I transferred to a desk job in Concord. I process permits. I answer phones. I don't go into the mountains. I don't touch ice. I don't look at white blazes. But I know what I saw. I know that Michael Torres found something on that mountain, something that offered him a choice. Something that he chose, deliberately, taking off his clothes, folding them neatly, walking barefoot through the snow to the ice door, trying to open it, trying to walk the path, trying to reach the light. And I know that I almost joined him, that if Jax hadn't called my name, if I hadn't pulled my hand back, I might have stepped through that door. I might have become a walker on the path. I might have reached the evaluation, the choice, the thing that waits at the end. I don't know what that thing is. I don't know what it wants. I don't know if it's malevolent or benevolent or simply indifferent. A force of nature like the wind or the cold, operating according to rules that have nothing to do with human morality. I just know that it's real, that it's out there, that it waits in the white places, the cold places, the spaces between the blazes, and that someday, probably soon, I'm going to see another door, another path, another choice, and I don't know if I'll have the strength to say no again. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know this. I spent 14 years saving people in the mountains. I thought I was fighting against the elements, against bad decisions, against the random cruelty of nature. I was wrong. I was fighting against something else. Something that collects the lost, the desperate, the ones who see the door and choose to open it. And I can't fight it anymore. I don't have the strength. I don't have the certainty. I don't have the belief that what I'm doing is right, is good, is worth the cost of seeing what I've seen. Knowing what I know, carrying the weight of a door made of ice that shows paths to places that shouldn't exist. I'm done. I'm out. I'm sitting at my desk in Concord, processing permits, answering phones, waiting for the day when I see the door again. Because I will see it again. I know I will. It's been waiting for me since November 17th, 2021. It can wait longer. But it won't wait forever. Nothing waits forever, not even the thing that wears white and watches from the end of the path.
My name is Samantha O'Brien. Everyone on the trail called me Sam. I'm 31 years old. I'm a physical therapist in Portland, Maine. I thru-hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2019, northbound, starting March 15th at Springer Mountain, finishing September 8th at Mount Katahdin. 177 days, 2,190 miles. I have the photograph at the summit, the certificate from the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, the white blaze tattoo on my left ankle that I got 3 days after I finished. I hiked the whole thing. Every step, every blister, every mountain, every shelter, I have the journal entries, the photographs, the GPS track on my phone. I can tell you the name of every shelter I stayed in, every trail angel who helped me, every hiker I met and hiked with and said goodbye to as we all walked our separate paces toward the same destination. But I didn't hike the Appalachian Trail. I hiked something else. Something that wore the AT like a costume, that followed the same route, that had the same white blazes and the same shelters and the same views. But underneath it was different, fundamentally different. And I didn't realize it until the end, until I stood on Katahdin and looked back at what I'd walked through and understood that the trail I'd hiked wasn't the trail that exists on maps and guidebooks and the stories of the millions of people who have walked those 2,000 miles. I started normal, or what passes for normal on the AT. Springer Mountain, the approach trail, the first white blaze. I was with a group. Trail name Soup, a guy from Florida who talked constantly. Trail name Cricket, a woman from Texas who never talked at all. Trail name Pastor, a retired minister who prayed at every summit. We hiked together for the first week, falling into the rhythm of the trail, learning our bodies, our gear, our limits. The first strange thing happened in the Smokies. Late April, I was hiking alone that day. Soup had gotten ahead, Cricket had fallen behind. Pastor was taking a zero in Gatlinburg. I was on a section between shelters, maybe 5 miles to go, moving through a dense part of the forest where the canopy was thick and the light was green and the world felt enclosed, intimate, like walking through a tunnel of leaves. I came to a clearing, not a natural clearing. Something had knocked the trees down years ago, decades maybe. The stumps were old, weathered, the wood gray. But in the center of the clearing, someone had built something, a structure made of stones, white stones arranged in a circle. In the center, a tree, dead but standing, white bark, white branches, white roots. And on every surface, the stones, the tree, the ground, white blazes, hundreds of them. I stopped at the edge of the clearing. I knew I shouldn't enter. Every instinct I had, every lesson I'd learned in 2 months on the trail, said keep walking, stay on the path, don't investigate the strange thing in the woods. But I was tired. I was curious. I was 2 months into a 6-month hike, and I thought I knew what I was doing, thought I understood the trail, thought I was in control. I stepped into the circle. The world didn't change dramatically. No flash of light, no sound, no obvious shift. But something was different. The air was thicker. The silence was deeper. The green of the leaves was too green, the white of the stones too white. And the tree, the white tree, seemed to be watching me, evaluating me, deciding something. I walked to the tree. I touched the bark. It was cold, not normal cold. The cold of absence. The cold of a place where warmth has never existed. And I felt something. A pressure in my mind, not a voice, not a thought, a presence. Something pushing against my consciousness, testing, probing, evaluating. I pulled my hand back. I stepped out of the circle. I kept walking. I told myself it was nothing, a strange formation, a local landmark, a place with unusual geology that created an uncanny atmosphere. I didn't mention it to Soup or Cricket or Pastor when I caught up with them. I didn't write about it in my journal. I pretended it hadn't happened. But it had happened. And things were different after that. The trail started to change. Not obviously, not dramatically, just subtly. The white blazes were in different places than I remembered from the guidebook. The shelters had different names, different configurations, different atmospheres. The other hikers, when I saw them, seemed distant, distracted, as if they were walking a different trail than I was, as if we were moving through the same space but in different dimensions. I told myself it was exhaustion, the mental fatigue of long-distance hiking, the way the trail blurs together after months of walking, the power of suggestion from the strange clearing. I kept walking. I kept following the blazes. I kept moving north, but the strangeness accumulated. In Virginia, I found a shelter that wasn't on any map, a wooden structure, three-sided, old, weathered, with a register that contained entries from hikers I'd never heard of, using trail names that didn't exist in the community, describing sections of trail that didn't match anything I knew. In Pennsylvania, I followed a blaze off the trail and found a hollow filled with white stones, white bones, white feathers. A structure in the center. A door frame standing alone with a white door closed waiting. I didn't touch it. I didn't open it. I walked back to the trail and pretended I hadn't seen it. In New York, I met a hiker who didn't seem human. Tall, thin, white clothes that seemed to be part of him rather than worn by him. No pack, no gear, just walking, northbound at a pace that was too fast, too smooth, too consistent. He looked at me as he passed. His eyes were white, no iris, no pupil. Just white, and he smiled. Not a human smile. A stretching of facial muscles that approximated a smile without containing any emotion. "You're walking well," he said. His voice was layered, multiple tones like a chord played on an out-of-tune piano. "Keep walking, keep following. The path is long, but the end is worth the walking." He passed me. I didn't follow. I stood there frozen, watching him disappear up the trail, moving at that impossible pace, that inhuman smoothness, until he was gone around a bend and I was alone again. I should have quit then. I should have gotten off the trail, gone home, forgotten about the AT and the white blazes and the strange hiker with white eyes. But I didn't, because I was a through hiker, because I'd walked 1,500 miles and I wasn't going to quit with 600 to go. Because the trail had become my identity, my purpose, my reason for being, and I couldn't imagine a life that didn't involve walking north, following blazes, reaching Katahdin. So I kept walking, and the trail kept changing. The shelters became stranger, older, more isolated. The other hikers became fewer, more distant, more like ghosts than people. The landscape shifted, became unfamiliar, became something that looked like the Appalachians but wasn't, that had the same mountains and valleys and ridges but arranged differently, as if someone had taken a photograph of the trail and rearranged the elements. I didn't eat much in those last weeks. I didn't sleep well. I walked in a daze following the blazes, moving north, one foot in front of the other, the rhythm that had carried me 2,000 miles becoming automatic, mechanical, something I did without thinking, without feeling, without awareness. And then, suddenly, I was at Katahdin. The sign was there. The wooden post with the carved letters. Katahdin, 5268 feet, northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. The view was there. The lakes, the forests, the endless expanse of Maine wilderness stretching to the horizon. The other hikers were there, real hikers, human hikers, laughing and crying and taking photos and celebrating the end of a long journey. I stood there, confused, disoriented, looking around at the normal world, the real world, the world I'd left 6 months ago and somehow returned to without understanding how. I had the photograph, the certificate, the tattoo. I had completed the trail, but I hadn't hiked the trail that exists on maps. I hadn't walked the same path that millions of others had walked. I'd walked something else. Something that wore the AT like a costume, that followed the same route but led somewhere different, that collected hikers like me and led them through a landscape that wasn't quite real, that evaluated them, that offered choices I didn't understand. And I don't know what choice I made. I don't know if I passed the evaluation or failed it. I don't know if I'm the same person who started at Springer Mountain, or if something changed in me during those 6 months, in the clearings and the hollows and the spaces between the white blazes. I finished. I reached Katahdin. I have the proof, but I don't feel like I finished anything. I feel like I'm still walking, still following blazes, still moving towards something I can't see, can't understand, can't escape. I see the white blazes everywhere now, not just on the trail, on buildings in Portland, on the sidewalk, on my own skin, and the tattoo that seemed like a celebration but now feels like a mark, a brand, a sign that I'm part of something I didn't choose to join. And sometimes late at night when the city is quiet and I'm alone in my apartment, I hear footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving around my bed, circling, evaluating, and I feel the pressure in my mind, the presence, the thing that watched me in the clearing, that walked past me in New York, that waited at the end of the path I walked for 6 months. You're walking well, it says, not aloud, in my mind, in that layered multi-tonal voice. Keep walking, keep following. The path is long, but the end is worth the walking. I don't know what the end is. I don't know if I want to reach it. I don't know if I have a choice anymore. I don't hike anymore. I don't go into the woods. I stay in Portland, in my apartment, in the light, in the noise, trying to drown out the footsteps and the voice and the feeling that I'm still walking, still following blazes, still moving toward an evaluation hasn't happened yet. But I know that the trail is longer than 2,000 miles, that it goes places that aren't on any map, that it connects to something older than the mountains, older than the hikers, older than the very concept of walking. And I know that I'm still on it, that I never really got off, that Katahdin was just another shelter, another milestone, another white blaze on a path that doesn't end at the summit but continues somewhere else, somewhere I can't see, can't imagine, can't escape. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know this, I hiked the Appalachian Trail, all of it, every step, every blister, every mountain, and I reached the end, or what I thought was the end, and I celebrated, and I got my tattoo, and I told everyone I was a through hiker, a completer, one of the few who walked the whole way. But I didn't walk the whole way. I walked something else, something that looked like the AT, that wore the same white blazes, that had the same shelters and the same views. But underneath, it was different, fundamentally different, and I didn't realize it until it was too late. Now I'm still walking, still following, still moving towards something I don't understand, and I don't know if I'll ever stop. I don't know if stopping is possible. I don't know if the trail allows stopping, or if walking is the only choice, the only reality, the only existence available to those who stepped into the circle and touched the white tree. I just know that I'm tired, that I want to rest, that I want to stop walking, stop following, stop being evaluated by something that wears white and watches from the edge of the path. But I can't, because the blazes are still there, on my ankle, on my walls, in my mind, leading somewhere, always leading somewhere, and I have to follow. I don't have a choice anymore.
My name is Kevin Yamamoto. I'm 28 years old. I work in IT support for a healthcare company in Phoenix, Arizona. I've never been east of the Mississippi. I've never hiked more than 5 miles in my life. I've never slept in a tent, never built a fire, never seen a white blaze on a tree. But I dream about the Appalachian Trail every night. I have for 6 months, since I found your channel. It started innocently enough. I was bored at work, scrolling through YouTube, looking for something to fill the silence of my cubicle. I found Night Souls. I watched a video about forest ranger horror stories. Then another. Then another. I subscribed. I started watching every upload. I fell asleep to your voice, to the stories, to the rhythm of the narration. And then I started dreaming. The first dream was simple. I was walking on a trail, a narrow path through dense forest, white blazes on trees, the sound of my footsteps on packed earth. I was wearing hiking boots, carrying a pack, moving at a steady pace. I felt good, strong, capable. I walked for what felt like hours, the forest passing around me, the trail winding through hills and valleys until I came to a shelter. It was an old wooden structure, 3-sided, with a roof and a platform and a register in a metal box. I sat down. I opened the register, and I saw my name written in my handwriting, dated 6 months in the future. Kevin Yamamoto, day 47, still walking, still following. The trail is longer than I thought. The blazes lead somewhere I didn't expect, but I'm still walking. I have to keep walking. I woke up confused. I told myself it was just a dream, just the power of suggestion from watching too many hiking videos, my brain creating a narrative from the fragments of stories I'd heard. I went to work. I forgot about it. But the dreams continued. Every night, the same trail, the same shelters, the same register with my name, my handwriting, dates that moved forward with each dream. Day 48, day 49, day 50. The entries got longer, more detailed, more disturbing. Day 52. Found a clearing today. White stones, white tree. I touched it. It was cold. I felt something push against my mind. I think it liked me. I think it wants me to keep walking. Day 55. Met another hiker. Tall, thin, white eyes. He said I was walking well. He said the path was long, but the end was worth the walking. I don't know what the end is. I don't know if I want to find out. Day 60. The trail is changing. The shelters are different. The blazes are in the wrong places. I followed one off the trail and found a hollow filled with white. A door, standing in the forest, closed, waiting. I didn't open it. I walked back to the trail. But I wanted to. I wanted to open it so badly. I started keeping a dream journal. I wrote down every detail, every image, every sensation. The cold of the white tree, the pressure in my mind, the voice of the tall hiker with white eyes. The door in the hollow. I told myself I was documenting my subconscious, exploring the symbolism, understanding my own mind. But the dreams felt real, more real than my waking life. The trail had texture, smell, temperature. I could feel the weight of the pack on my shoulders, the blisters on my feet, the sweat on my back. I could taste the water from streams, the dehydrated food from my pack, the metallic tang of fear when I saw something I couldn't explain. And the other hikers, the ones I met in the dreams, they felt real too. Soup, the talkative guy from Florida. Cricket, the silent woman from Texas. Pastor, the retired minister who prayed at every summit. I'd never met these people. I'd never heard their trail names. But in the dreams I knew them. I hiked with them. I laughed with them. I watched them disappear, one by one, into clearings and hollows and spaces between the white blazes. Day 75. Soup is gone. He followed a blaze off the trail and didn't come back. I found his pack at the edge of a clearing, his gear arranged neatly, his boots placed side by side as if he'd taken them off deliberately. But no Soup, just his trail name carved into a white stone at the edge of the clearing. as if he'd become part of the place, part of the path. Day 80, Cricket stopped talking completely, not that she talked much before. But now she's silent in a different way, a heavy silence, a silence that has weight and texture. She looks at me sometimes with eyes that aren't her eyes, white eyes, evaluating, waiting. I don't know if Cricket is still Cricket. I don't know if she ever was. Day 85, Pastor prayed at his summit and something answered. Not God, something else, something that spoke in multiple voices, layered like a chord on an out-of-tune piano. It told him he was walking well. It told him the path was long, but the end was worth the walking. Pastor stopped praying after that. He just walks, silent, white-eyed, following blazes that I can't see. I woke from that dream screaming. My roommate banged on my door, asked if I was okay. I said I was fine. Bad dream, nothing to worry about. But I wasn't fine. I was terrified. Because in the dream, on day 85, I'd looked at my own reflection in a stream, and my eyes were white. No iris, no pupil, just white, and I'd smiled. That stretching of facial muscles that approximated a smile without containing any emotion. I stopped watching Night Souls. I unsubscribed. I deleted my viewing history. I told myself I was breaking the association, interrupting the dream cycle, reclaiming my subconscious from the power of suggestion. But the dreams continued, worse than before, more vivid, more real, more inescapable. Day 90. I found the convergence point today, the place where all the lines of blazes meet. A hollow, deep in the forest, surrounded by trees older than anything I've seen. In the center, a structure, a door, standing alone, white, painted with blazes that move and shift and form faces I almost recognize. Day 91, I touched the door. It was cold, the cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed. And through it, I saw something, a path, leading through spaces that aren't spaces, between trees that aren't trees, toward a light that isn't light. And on that path, figures, walking, hiking, carrying packs, moving toward the light, toward something that waits at the end. Day 92. I'm going to open the door. I have to. I can't stop walking. I can't stop following. The trail is all there is. The blazes are all there are. And the door is the end, the evaluation, the choice. I have to know what's on the other side. I have to know what waits at the end of the path. I woke up on day 93, in my bed, in Phoenix, in the desert, where there are no trails, no forests, no white blazes. I was shaking, sweating, my heart hammering, my mind filled with images of doors and paths and lights that aren't lights. And on my ankle, when I pulled back the covers, I found it. A white blaze, not a tattoo, not a mark. A blaze, painted on my skin, 2 by 6 inches, the standard AT marker, white and crisp and fresh. I touched it. It was cold, the cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed. I scrubbed it. I showered. I used soap, alcohol, acetone. Nothing removed it. The blaze stayed, white, crisp, fresh, a mark that said I was part of the trail, that I was walking, even in my sleep, even in the desert, even in a life that had nothing to do with hiking or forests or mountains. I went to a doctor. I told him I'd woken up with a rash. He looked at it, frowned, said it didn't look like any rash he'd seen. He took a biopsy, sent it to a lab. The results came back, normal skin, no foreign substances, no paint, no dye, no chemical residue. Just my skin, slightly depigmented in the exact shape of an Appalachian Trail blaze. He referred me to a dermatologist. The dermatologist was puzzled. He'd never seen anything like it. He suggested it might be vitiligo, but in a very specific pattern, very unusual. He prescribed a cream. It didn't work. The blaze stayed. I went to a psychiatrist. I told her about the dreams. about the channel, about the blaze on my ankle. She listened, took notes, suggested that I might be experiencing a dissociative episode, a break from reality brought on by stress and the power of suggestion. She prescribed medication. It didn't stop the dreams. Every night I walk the trail. Every night I get closer to the door. Every night I feel the evaluation, the watching, the presence that waits at the end of the path. And every morning I wake up with new marks. White spots on my skin, small at first, growing larger, spreading, forming patterns that look like blazes, like paths, like maps of something I can't understand. I'm writing this because I don't know what else to do, because I need someone to know, because I need to understand if I'm going crazy or if something is happening to me that has nothing to do with sanity, with psychology, with the boundaries of what we call reality. I live in Phoenix. I've never been to the Appalachians. I've never hiked the AT, but I dream about it every night, and the dreams are more real than my waking life, and I'm marked with white blazes that doctors can't explain, and I feel the presence of something that watches and evaluates and waits for me to open a door that I haven't found yet, but know with absolute certainty that I will find. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything, but I know this. I found your channel 6 months ago. I watched your videos. I fell asleep to your voice, and something found me. Something that wears the shape of a trail, that speaks through white blazes, that collects hikers and dreamers and anyone who looks too long at the spaces between. I'm still walking, even when I'm awake, even when I'm at my desk in Phoenix, even when I'm surrounded by desert and concrete and the artificial light of a city that has no forests, no mountains, no trails. I'm still walking, still following, still moving toward a door that waits in a hollow I haven't found yet. And I don't know if I'll have the strength to say no when I find it. I don't know if saying no is possible. I don't know if the trail allows no, or if walking is the only choice, the only reality, the only existence available to those who have been marked, who have been evaluated, who have been found worthy or unworthy of the path. I just know that I'm scared, that I've never been this scared in my life, that I live in a desert city 2,000 miles from the nearest white blaze, and yet I'm walking a trail that exists in my dreams, in my skin, in the spaces between my thoughts. And I know that someday, probably soon, I'm going to fall asleep and dream about opening that door. And when I wake up, I don't know if I'll still be in Phoenix. I don't know if I'll still be me. I don't know if waking up will be possible, or if the dream will become the reality, and the trail will become the only world, and the door will open, and I'll walk through, and I'll finally understand what waits at the end of the path. I don't want to understand. I want to stay here, in Phoenix, in my cubicle, in my apartment, in my life that is small and safe and meaningless. But I don't think I have a choice anymore. I think the trail chose me. I think the blazes marked me. I think the evaluation is complete, and the only thing left is to walk the final miles, to reach the door, to open it, to see what waits on the other side. If you're reading this, if you've watched this far, if you've heard my story, be careful. Be careful what you watch. Be careful what you dream about. Be careful what trails you follow, even in your mind. Because some trails are longer than 2,000 miles. Some trails reach through screens, through speakers, through the spaces between stories, and find people who never meant to walk them. I'm walking now. Even as I write this, I can feel my feet moving, one in front of the other, following blazes that I can see with my eyes closed. I'm walking toward the door, toward the evaluation, toward the end. And I don't know what happens after that. I don't know if anyone will find this. I don't know if I'll be here to see it posted. I just know that I had to write it. I had to tell someone. I had to leave a record, a message, a warning for anyone who might be next. Be careful. Stay on the known path. Don't follow blazes that lead to hollows. Don't touch white trees. Don't listen to voices that speak in multiple tones. And whatever you do, don't open the door. Because once it's open, you can't close it. And once you walk through, You can't walk back. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. But I know that I'm still walking, and I know that the door is getting closer. And I know that soon, very soon, I'm going to reach out and touch the handle, and it's going to be cold, the cold of absence, the cold of a place where warmth has never existed. And I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to push, and I'm going to walk through. And whatever's on the other side, whatever waits at the end of the path, will finally have what it wants, me.